Right, I'd like to welcome everyone out to our Layton City work meeting for February 18th. We're starting at 5:32. And the first item up on our agenda is our council reports. So council, do you have anything you'd like to share with one another?
Layton is participating in a well-being survey that is being done by the University of or Utah State University, along with the assistance of the Utah League of Cities and Towns. We're one of 29 cities that are participating. And if you will go to the city's website, there's a link to take the survey. It's for Layton residents 18 and over. We have until next Wednesday, the 25th, to take it. But it's one we really need everybody to participate in if they could. And I'm going to make a challenge to my 4 council members who are of the male gender, if you're listening. We got some preliminary results, and we have a lot of women filling out the survey, but not enough men. So if I'm going to make a challenge, if you guys would go on and fill out the survey, it would be very much appreciated, because I'm sure you're all over 18, except maybe Zach. But no. Yeah. He feels like it, yeah. I still think you're in junior high, Zach. But, oh, well. But no, if you guys would do that, it's going to provide us, the city, as well as Davis Behavioral Health, and it's not just health questions. It's a survey, too, about how we feel about living within our city. So I think it's really a good one that we get on board and do. Other than that, that's it.
Zach or Clint, do you want to talk about the league or their essay contest, maybe? One of you guys?
Sure. I think, I'll just pull up my notes here. So Clint, myself, and Gary have obviously been involved in the discussions about some of the bills that have been through committee and on the floor. We just got word that Representative, let me just pull it up here, sorry.
Paul Ray or Ward?
Okay.
Representative Ward's bill that we just barely got the brand new version of it, and the league's looking at it, and I think the league's actually comfortable enough to move to a neutral position on it, which is a far cry from what they were before. Mm-hmm. And so that's the current status of that one. I actually listened in yesterday to a bill based on rioting and kind of upping the criminal sanctions for people who are disturbing the peace. And there was a specific provision in there that the city, myself, I guess, and talked to Gary a little bit about it, were worried about waiving immunity for allowing individual actors to be able to sue the city if they felt like the city wasn't doing enough to protect their private property. But that portion of it, the governmental immunity portion of it, was actually removed during the committee meeting. So, and it passed out of committee. And so, who knows if that actually will make it to the floor, and if it will actually be passed. But the concern that we had as a city about putting our police officers in a situation where they might have to decide, do I protect this person's property or do I protect this person's life? It put them in a little bit difficult position, so I was happy to see that was removed. And then we're just keeping track, keeping tabs, and Gary keeps us up to date on one things that we know, and so once we get information, we're happy to pass it along to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask just one? What's going on with the inspector deal?
HB 98.
Yeah, HB 98. I was going to say that, but I had no clue what you're talking about.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
So we've been working with the HBA, Home Builders Association, to amend that. And I got a first draft yesterday morning. Unfortunately, legislative research is really, really behind. And so the second portion of it, which is the design portion, I haven't gotten yet. But the bill as drafted takes out all of the preemption, leaves it pretty much the way that it is right now, which is you got 14 days to do your plan review, you got 3 days to do your inspection. If you don't do your plan review within 14 days, penalty's the same. They can proceed forward just based on the engineer's stamp. 3 days to do the inspection. If you don't do your inspection within 3 days, the city can still hire somebody to do that inspection, or the developer, the builder, can actually go and hire somebody to do the inspection for them. I've checked with our building inspectors, and I actually talked to the Building Inspector Association, and they're all going, we can do that. That's something we can do. They narrowed it down to just single family and duplex. Duplexes are kind of like looking at a single family home. No commercial, no multifamily, and the building permit fees are still paid in full by the developer, and so the builder. New definition of what a building inspector is includes a definition that includes insurance that a building inspector now must have, because he's not operating under the city's zoning, or immunity. No immunity for the building inspector. So Doppel's going to have to put some new rules in play to deal with the insurance piece. I don't know anybody that would do this unless they were absolutely compelled to by a city that really was violating the rules, but it's been narrowed way, way back. I'm very, very confident, because we've talked to both the leadership in the House and leadership in the Senate, that this is the version of the bill that will pass once it comes out. So right now, the bill that's up in front of everybody is the old 98, which preempts everything. We should still really actively engage against that. But I believe by tomorrow afternoon we should have a completed draft of 98 and be able to get that to you, show it to you.
Okay.
And it'll be on the positive side, yeah. So a lot of work, a lot of talking, a lot of arm twisting.
A lot of late nights,
A lot of
early
late
mornings.
nights. Yes, but thank you, and appreciate our team up there very, very much. Thank you, Mayor, as well.
Madam Mayor, and to Councilman Thomas, we all got that email yesterday about it, which, was a little preemptive, which is what, we've been talking about. It's kind of difficult to fight all guns blazing about a bill that you don't even know what it is. And so, I think Clint and I talked yesterday, and our idea was, let's wait and see what the bill actually looks like before we make a motion or act as a city, And obviously that's just something for us to discuss, but
Right.
we don't even know what that is yet, so.
Well, we'll rely on Mr. Crane to keep us informed on that, since he's the one pretty much doing most of the negotiation, I believe, or a lot of it anyway, on behalf of not only us, but the league. So thank you, Gary, for all your service there. Okay, anybody else want to report on anything? Okay, let's continue then. At this hour, we get to engage in a fun, no, I won't. It's our actually training moment, brought to you by Mr. Gary Crane.
Thank you very, very much.
I have no idea what the topic is today, so you're lucky.
I appreciate the mayor talking it out, and I'm sorry you're all going to be disappointed after it's all done. Okay, let's go.
It's not the first time.
Nice. I don't get
No, that was nice. I'm sorry.
I think all you guys are filling your oats all of a sudden.
These two, right here. Been drinking this water.
So,
Oh, weighing the evidence.
I hope this works. If it does, we're in good shape. If it doesn't, we'll just
You wing it.
wing it. You're right. Let's see. Oh, it does. Look at that. So, just one of my most painful experiences in a courtroom occurred early in my career, when I was sitting at a table, and on the other side was a very experienced lawyer, and we were doing cross-examination, and the other lawyer I was sitting with was supposed to be helping me because I was brand new, and you know that when you make an objection in a courtroom, you have to very, very quickly back it with the reason for the objection, and so the witness was going on, and I was focused on what I was writing down on my paper, and the other lawyer bumps me and he says, "That's hearsay. That's clearly hearsay. So I jump up and I say, Your Honor, that's hearsay. That's clearly hearsay. And the judge looked at me like, which rock have you been hiding under for all these years of law school that you supposedly attended? The guy hadn't even spoken yet. There is no such thing as hearsay when nobody speaks. And so I had to eat crow, sit down, and then the judge had me come up afterwards, and he taught me what hearsay was. Hearsay, you've seen it on TV, right? What is hearsay? Hearsay is when I use what somebody else has said. Okay, so I heard from Steve Garside that if you put tanning salons in, you know what happens in tanning salons, right? And so I'm using what somebody else said outside of the forum that we're in to establish the truth of what I'm trying to demonstrate, of the point I'm trying to demonstrate. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, objection hearsay. So you're probably going to do that in the middle of my presentations from now on, whenever I hit that piece. But the key is this: how much weight do you think a judge gives hearsay when a judge hears hearsay evidence? I mean, they're the ones that receive it, and they're the ones that are supposed to be making a decision. How much weight do you think they give something where somebody says, well, I heard so-and-so say this, Heavy? Light?
Zero.
Light. Mayor's going Zippo. That's exactly right. Very, very light. Very, very light. The reason I'm pointing this out is because, you're not judges, but oftentimes you sit in a position that's very, very close to doing what a judge does. That is having to weigh the evidence that comes before you. And remember, we talked about the different hats that you wear. And when you make a land use decision, you're passing a law. And when you pass a law, all you need to do is make sure that you have a rational basis for passing that law. And the rational basis has to have something to do with planning. And you got to make sure that when you pass that law, and you point out that it has something to do with planning, that you mention what that is on the record, so that you got a record of why you passed that law. But it's pretty easy. The passage of laws and the legislative part of it's pretty easy, isn't it? Because you can have any reason. You can have been elected to get rid of every convenience store in Layton, because that's the reason you were elected. Is that a good planning, or is that a good planning reason for passing a zoning law that outlaws all convenience stores in Layton? Probably not. Okay. But if you combine that with a good planning reason, a valid planning reason, like, for example, you decide, they'll only be acceptable in our city centers or in this area or that area, but in all other areas, no, because your master plan says that these things should be located. Then all of a sudden, a potentially invalid decision becomes a valid zoning decision, right? Then you got your rational basis. And so weighing the evidence, weighing what comes into you is extremely important, especially when you're making administrative determinations. Because administrative determinations, a little bit higher standard. Substantial evidence. Now, I'm going to tell you what substantial evidence is. When you're listening to somebody stand up here and say, you know what, I want this use approved, and there's an ordinance that says that if I do this, this, and this, it should be approved. Guess what? You got what it takes, right, to be able to approve it. If somebody's standing up here and saying, I want this use approved, and then the next person gets up and said, don't approve this use because kids are going to be killed, and because, the neighborhood's going to go to pot, and because there's going to be crime all over the place. I think we heard that about a dental office once. Do you remember that kind of? Yeah, you're shaking your head, so you remember that. I never quite thought of a dental office as being a center of crime. But does that sound a lot like what we were talking about a few minutes ago, where you got hearsay or evidence that should not be given as heavy a consideration as what the actual facts are? For example, looking at the key question is there a sufficient tax or factual basis for it? And so if I were to come in and I were to say, the neighbors are to say, hey, listen, kids are going to get killed. Predators sit in the parking lots of dental shops, and it's right next to our neighborhood. And okay, so the things that they're saying, you'll pull out of those the things that are relevant. And the things that might be relevant are concerns about traffic, for example. And the thing that would rebut something about traffic would be what's better evidence about whether or not that street will handle the adequate traffic? Is it what somebody is saying, somebody else said, the neighbors are all saying that the kids are going to be killed, there's going to be too much traffic on the street? Or would it be a traffic study that you require the developer to do? And he produces that traffic study for you, and a traffic engineer looks at it, and our engineer, there's another source, right, of credible information, is our professionals, the engineers. The city finance director is the expert on finance. The city engineer is the expert on engineering issues. The city planner is the expert on planning issues. Hopefully the city attorney's somewhere in there, doing something reasonable. But the bottom line is you use those resources to kind of debunk the hearsay part of it, or the evidence that isn't as heavy and isn't as dependable. And there's a great case. It's called Davis County versus Clearfield City. Davis County had it was a kind of a group home is what they wanted approved, and Clearfield City Planning Commission had considered the group home, and then it was appealed to the city council. The Planning Commission denied it because if you want anything to pull a bunch of people into a meeting, use a group home. That's the reason we don't have hearings over group homes anymore, because group homes have been essentially preempted by federal law. We have to allow them in our boundaries, but this is back when they didn't. So Davis County is trying to put a group home in, and when they tried to put the group home in, they got everybody and their dog came out and said, don't do this, it's going to destroy the neighborhood, it's going to kill us. Listen, all the horrible things that would happen, this, that, and the other thing. And they decided against them. And then the city council, when it was appealed to them, decided against Davis County. And Davis County decided to appeal it to the Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals said this: neighborhood opposition and unfounded expressions of concern, even though they're nice to hear, are not adequate to be able to make an valid administrative decision. And I wanted to just actually get you the wording so that you could take a look at it. It says, denial of a conditional use permit is arbitrary, and you could just put any type of administrative decision or legislative decision, is arbitrary when the reason given are without sufficient factual basis. Consent of the neighboring landowners may not be a criterion for approval of a conditional use permit. And actually, you could extend that to any type of zoning decision. Isn't that true? How much weight should you give when you've got an audience full of people and you say, how many people are in favor of this application being approved? And how many are against this application being approved? I have seen city councils actually do that. I've seen planning commissions do that. And the answer is, on the scale of the weight that you should give that type of evidence, where would it be? Heavy or light? Light, right? That's what the court's saying. It's saying it should be light. Denial of a conditional use must be based on something more concrete than neighborhood opposition and unfounded expressions of concern for public safety and welfare. So what could you do? You could take a look at some actual statistics regarding these homes. And when they actually did look at the actual statistics, there was no increase in crime. You could go to your police chief, who's another expert. Whenever you hear about traffic concerns, you've got your engineer, you've got your police chief, you've got individuals who can give you that information, who can firm up that hearsay evidence and make it actually helpful and valid. Just some other examples of stuff you hear. I love it. If all the requirements of the ordinance have been met, you're on really safe ground, right? If you can go through and do a checklist yourself of the ordinance, that is the greatest evidence that you can actually use to sustain your decision. Crime's going to increase in the area. Just that loose statement enough or not? Not, right? But what might it do? It might kick up to you the idea that maybe you ought to take a look at that, but a lot of times it's just hearsay, right? It's just hearsay that these things are going to create crime in the area. How about state or federal law prohibiting you from, let's see, I flipped too far. I'll just pick a couple. State or federal law prohibiting you from saying no, that's the group home situation. And so that's probably one of the strongest reasons for making a decision is there's a law that says you have to make it that way, right? There's nothing better.
I don't agree with that, but yeah, that's right.
But that's it, okay. And then,
Building inspections, sorry.
so I think you get it, and this is supposed to be just a short presentation, but I think you understand that when you sit up there, you're continually weighing what you're hearing, and you're giving a weight to it. Give the greatest weight to those things that actually have a factual basis or premise to them. When you're doing a zone change, one of the strongest pieces of evidence that the zone change is proper is what?
General plan.
General plan. If all you said was, we're going to rezone this because the general plan says that this is the way we should rezone it, that's enough. That will carry any day in court. Absolutely any day. That's all you need to say. The other piece of advice, just in finalizing this, would be make sure you create a good record. And thank you. You do that quite often. This council will give their reasons for what they're voting on. And giving your reasons for what you're voting on creates a great record. And if we ever we do have to go to court because of a decision that you've made, I can pull from what you've said your reasons for voting the way that you did. What's even better than that is if the person making the motion, after the motion's made, you know, the mayor calls for a motion, and then the mayor calls for a second to the motion, and then the mayor always calls for a discussion on the motion. That discussion piece is extremely important, because that's where I'm going to look first, and the court's going to look first for your reasons for the decision that was made, if that motion succeeds. Is that little thing called discussion. They're going to listen to what each member of the council said about this thing. And so that's a great place to build your record and make your findings, or give your evidence, the evidence of things that caused you to vote the way that you did. Questions?
So in making the motion, though, if we state that it's consistent with the general plan, haven't we
Done everything you need to do.
So is that the better place to do it, or leave it for the discussion?
If it's that simple, the person that makes the motion certainly should give their reasons for making the motion, and that's enough. And the entire council, if you agree with that, you don't need to say any more. One thing I've noticed, though, is a lot of times it is a good idea also to incorporate, if part of the reason you're making the motion the way you are, to incorporate staff's recommendations. And, for example, in a site plan review where you've actually got conditions that you've imposed, to impose staff's recommendations is a good thing to do in a motion, although I can always argue that was in front of you, and that those were incorporated by your reference to them. But that's always a good thing to do. That's a great question. So the person making the motion, if they summed it up for all of you, don't worry about it. All of you don't have to say the same thing. It's a good point. Any other questions?
Point of clarification. Okay. Knowing that as the governing body here, we follow Robert's Rules of Order, but we don't have to be precise to Robert's Rules of Order. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that discussion is taken place prior to the motion, which that's fine, right? Because that's basically still stating maybe your opinion or how you feel or whatever. So it isn't like I have to call for discussion once the second's been made and have them restate it, because we've already captured it. Is that correct? or
That's
not?
correct.
Okay.
Utah courts say that they will sift through the minutes of a meeting and find out why you voted the way you did, and I can pull all that out of what you've said. But the better thing is if you don't think it's been said and you don't think your reasons have been expressed, make sure you put it in that discussion period. You don't have to, but because I can pull it out, but please do if there's a reason that has not been expressed that that you've seen during the course of it.
Okay.
So that would be good. Thank you. Any questions on that?
Just appreciate what you said, but sometimes let us know when the fun part is. Okay?
There is no fun part in
Thanks
in
for
law,
weighing
I'm
in,
afraid.
Dave.
Yeah. According to the general plan, it talks about lawyers and how they should speak and stuff, so I just help them.
So do the scriptures, but they don't say very good things about them. Anyway,
Hey, thanks for wiping that down without being asked.
oh, you're welcome. I did one thing right. Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, which Chad Wilkinson will share with us, the rezone request and plat amendment.
I can. You betcha. All right. Oops. I'm going to skip through a few of those things that'll come up later at council. Mayor and council, this is an item, a request for a couple of different applications. The first is a rezone from CH and R18 to CTH. The second is a plat amendment. These go together. I'll present the information together, but during the city council meeting, there will need to be 2 separate motions, one related to the plat amendment, one related to the rezone request. Just as a way of context, by way of context, the property that we're talking about is here on South Fort Lane, 471 South Fort Lane. You can see that approximate location with the red dot on the screen. Here's an aerial photo showing the property in question. There are 3 zones that currently exist. There are 2 zones that exist, and there's the additional request for the CTH. But you've got a portion of the property that's CH zoning up here at the front along Fort Lane. There's a in-between parcel that's zoned currently R18, and then a parcel that's within the existing Rosewood subdivision that fronts on Kimball and Kimball Drive. And there's also a parcel that is an adjacent parcel that's part of the subdivision amendment, but not part of the zone change. This is a little bit of a complicated moving parts type of an application. So I want to just take just a brief minute and explain in some detail what the proposal is. Picture's worth 1,000 words, so I'm going to try to let that be worth those words. The white outlined area is the area that's proposed for CTH zoning. It includes that front piece that's currently got CH zoning and that parcel that's behind with the R18. You can see the other portion of the property outlined in red, the subject of our subdivision amendment. These are 2 lots in the existing Rosewood subdivision. You can see there's a little triangle piece of property that projects into this larger parcel behind this existing home. In order for that to kind of create a straight line and a more developable without any kind of weird intrusions from the adjacent property, the applicant is proposing to amend that subdivision boundary. There'll be a change that will allow for parcel 11072007 to maintain the minimum lot size for the zone, which is R18, it's an 8,000 square foot lot size, and we'll still provide another R18 lot here that meet that minimum lot size dimensions and standards. So in a nutshell, again, this is the proposed zone change. The area along Kimball Drive is not proposed for a zone change. It will remain R18, but it is proposed for a subdivision amendment to facilitate, again, the correct size for this parcel 007 as this parcel changes hands, this little triangle, to clean up that development line. It is consistent with the general plan for this area. It's a mixed-use corridor. This property is identified within that mixed-use corridor. CTH was the zoning that was selected in this case for a number of reasons, but it does have some good standards that require certain amounts of open space that the applicant has designed into their conceptual design. We're not here to consider a specific design tonight. We're here to consider the zone change request. Again, this is that summary of what that looks like in those various parcels. This is a copy of the subdivision plat amendment. You can see we're making that what is now going to be lot 101 a little bit bigger. And then that will, again, allow both of those lots to meet that minimum lot size. With that, the Planning Commission did review this request. They have recommended approval of this zone change request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. The zone change and the subdivision amendment. Thank you.
Okay, council, any questions?
Just a quick question, Chad, on that southern of the two lots. Are the setbacks still good after that new line's drawn on that existing building?
On the existing Rosewood subdivision?
Yeah.
They'll be better. Yeah, that'll
Better.
actually make the, yeah, it actually moves that property line to the north. So
Okay.
it actually will create those even more setback there. Yep. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, so I have a couple. Not too long ago, there was the assembly of the property on Main and Fort Lane, where they kind of intersect where the trailer cells and all that was, with the idea of the commercial highway. We were shown a really nice picture of what, potential could be there. Is there a concern that this is being taken out of the CH? Or was there ever a vision that whole area be part of that CH, or just that west side of the road?
It's actually the opposite. The vision for the general plan is that area will be mixed use. We're not really sure why that property was changed to CH. It's never been used commercially. I don't know if that was something that they had hoped would result in some commercial use there, but the general plan and part of that previous application there on a little bit further south is that eventually that'll transition itself to mixed use, and part of that was to try to get those properties consolidated into a parcel that was big enough to do a viable mixed-use development. So that this entire area is earmarked for mixed-use development, which includes a variety of things, can include a variety of things, commercial and residential. But yeah, this one, that particular CTH, it's a little bit of an anomaly. It sits in the middle of existing single-family residential, never has really been a viable commercial parcel, and particularly with the commercial development that's occurred a little bit further to the north, it's even less viable for commercial use and makes sense to be part of a mixed-use zone, with, in this case, condo townhome zone that can allow for some residential development.
Okay, and then is there a reason why a development agreement's not being done with the rezone?
It's consistent with the general plan, so there wasn't any need for us to do any kind of development agreement.
And the CTH is good enough for design and all of that to hold them to those?
Yeah, CTH has some standards specific to open space minimums and design standards. That was part, and we'll talk about that in just a minute actually, but that was part of some revisions to the CTH zone that were adopted several months ago.
Okay, and then I just have it's kind of a question on there are two different engineer reports in here, one from the 22nd of December and one from the 12th of January, and there are two different engineers. So Shannon stated back in December that she felt like the calculations that were given in the acreage was significantly less than what was being proposed. She had listed it was showing at 3.05 acres, and they calculated at 1.635 acres. So I was kind of curious why the difference there. And then when you go on into Elizabeth's report, in number 3 and 4 on her report, let me pull those up really quick. I don't quite understand what she's saying on that. So she's talking about lot 7 and 44 and 46. And we're talking about lots 101 and 102. So I'm kind of confused.
Yeah, so in order to change the plat, they have to assign new numbers. The old numbers
Okay.
are lot 7, and I think lot 8. I'd have to look that up really quick. But any time they do a subdivision amendment, they have to record new numbers because those lots will no longer exist. So that's the reason for that difference in number. As far as the the 44 and 46. I don't know what those are referring to. I'd have to find out what those lot numbers are referring to. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, like I said, because there's 3 lots listed in the Rosewood subdivision, but we're only talking about 2. So that's, I know they renumber them. I'm just, don't understand why there's 3 lots and we're only talking about 2.
We do have the applicant here, and it sounds like they can maybe address that question if you'd like.
Okay,
Mayor.
and then on the acreage, what is the final acreage that's been calculated on this? Because like I said, in Shannon's report on page 45 of our packet, it says, the legal description of the combined rezone was not submitted. Future applications need to include a surveyed legal description. Our calculations indicate that the total acreage is 1.635, to be significantly less than the total indicated on the application at 3.05 acres. And so that's a pretty good discrepancy. That's half, almost twice as much land versus what.
Yeah, there has been a legal description submitted now after that preliminary review. If you look at your staff report, let me just see if I can find that legal description. It may be attached to the ordinance is maybe where we want to go. But you can see the acreages there. You'd have to add those up. But I can certainly do those in just a moment. But that had not been provided at the time. It has been provided now.
Okay.
And I can do some quick math on that.
Well, as long as it's been figured in and
Yeah,
we're
it's not a
dealing with
concern
the right.
for the current zone change
Okay.
request. It was just something that needed to be submitted and has been now.
Okay.
If you look at that ordinance that is right in front of your staff report, it has those acreages
Yeah.
outlined. So,
Okay. I just want to make sure that they were jiving because so the application was different than what they were calculating, so.
thank you. Mayor, if you'd like, we can have the applicant address that lot 44 and 46. I honestly don't have a good answer for you on that one, so.
Yeah, please do. You're welcome to come up to this other podium.
Sure. Madam Mayor and Council, appreciate your time. So 44 and 46, that lot on the north, which is now, it's hard to see that northern lot of the Rosewood subdivision actually was not a lot in the Rosewood subdivision when that was developed. And so that was lot 46, which is now going to be renamed. And if this motion is approved, it would become a lot within the Rosewood subdivision. And lot 44 is the smaller part that's on the, Chad, can we go back where you're showing that map? So,
Is that parcel number probably?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so 44 and 46 are, as Chad has described, this has been a lot of moving parts, but you can see where we're creating a new parcel for the Rosewood subdivision in a single parcel in the white outline, where there was formerly 3 lots, it will be 2, but there was a requirement to rename the lots or to renumber the lots because of how it was previously written. And then to address your comment on the parcel size, we actually have also purchased the lot across the street. So when we initially submitted, it was a single application, and that parcel across the street was included, and that was prior to the new identification, excuse me, for the new lots on the west side.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay. No more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that covers all of 3 then? Because you've talked about the subdivision plat and addressed the 517 South Fort Lane, so I guess just go ahead and go on to number 4?
Certainly,
Is what
yeah.
we'll do? Okay. So, being that you're there, go
Okay,
for it. This is an
I'll just jump
update.
in, yeah.
Yeah, this is an update that we requested some information on regarding our landscape, and then we'll have somebody else talk about another topic.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Yeah, I understand there were some questions about the timing of the landscape ordinance amendments that we've anticipated for a little while. I wanted to talk about that. I had asked for your indulgence for just a minute as we looked at these, at the timing for this particular ordinance. we found it helpful as staff to kind of look at where we're at right now on timing, and to look backward just a little bit to kind of see where we've been and how that's impacted some of our timing on some of these amendments. This particular chart that's before you represents a calendar that shows some of the amendments that have occurred in the past and also leading up to some of the things that we're working on right now. The reason that I wanted to talk just a little bit about this is that you'll notice on that left-hand side, we've got several different categories of amendments. As we look at these text amendments, you can kind of divide them into different categories. The first one of those is, as we adopted our general plan in September of 2019, there were amendments to the code that had to take place pretty immediately in order to make our zoning ordinance consistent with our new general plan. One of those, you'll remember, was the PRUD ordinance. That was a massive effort. This chart doesn't go back far enough to show how many months that was worked on before adoption. This is just a fraction of that amount of time that was spent on the PRUD ordinance. But that was one of the first things that happened after the general plan was adopted, was just to adopt that PRUD ordinance to make our code consistent with some of the new policies of our general plan. Same thing with CTH. We just talked about that a little bit. One of the next things out of the gate was some revisions to our CTH standards to make sure that we were capturing some of those things that were important in terms of design and open space and things that were really important to be adopted, as we anticipated that we would now get more applications for CTH, which we have. A third item, which we probably didn't emphasize this component of this as much at the time, but our parking ordinance was actually also a direct reflection of the adoption of our moderate income housing plan. If you remember, the state now requires a few strategies that we have to adopt as part of our moderate income housing plan. One of those choices on the ballot was to look at our parking standards to see if there could be some adjustments made that would allow for or help in producing and creating moderate income housing within the city. So that parking ordinance was kind of the next one related to the general plan and the moderate income housing plan that came next. You can kind of see the timing there. There's a couple of different categories as we talk about text amendments. Some of these text amendments are fairly straightforward. There may be one or two lines changed in the code. Those go fairly quickly. Most of the time on those is spent on the required noticing and getting it into the public hearings that have to occur. But there are others that I've listed there as comprehensive that are a much larger effort. Those are items that take months, without question, sometimes years to get through those, because we're changing an entire section of our zoning ordinance. Parking is a good example of that. PRUD was a good example of that. As we move down the list here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we also have state mandated changes to our code. You'll see a little blue over here on this side of the screen that's a placeholder for potential changes to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, depending on what happens with our state legislature in the next couple of weeks. But that could be something we need to change fairly quickly. As we move down that list a little bit more, you'll see that there's another category of text amendments that are submitted by citizens. These are folks that come in and request an amendment to our code. They pay a fee, they make an application, and those are applications that we then are required to process. We don't have as much control over when those particular amendments come through, but we do process them. Some of them are approved, some of them are not. You can see some old favorites back there as far as the discussion we had about some of these farm animals and things that came through as a request from property owners. But that just reflects the timing of those and where those came in relation to some of these other amendments. So now getting back to our landscape ordinance discussion, we've very recently completed, again, home occupation ordinance changes that were very important, especially with the pandemic, to get some more clarity for what could happen with home occupations. That was something that was prioritized by staff. These are all in the category of city-initiated text amendments. You'll notice there's not really any meaning to these colors except for one color, this kind of dark orange here on the bottom part of this slide. All of those amendments are related to issues that came up about this time last year, if you remember, where we had concerns about some of our developments. We had concerns about grading, drainage, concerns from citizens. We had concerns about some of our steep slope lots, sensitive lands issues. That first one you adopted just about a month ago, a little bit over a month ago, which was our comprehensive review of all of our Title 15, 18, and 19. It's all of our development standards. We looked at all of those. We spent You can see we spent about 11 months as a staff going through that in detail, came back with a comprehensive amendment of that ordinance to create some consistency. And then the next ones that are a part of that are an amendment to our sensitive lands ordinance. That was something we identified that needed to occur in support of those same concerns that came up from that group of citizens. And then also, kind of in the wings would be an amendment to our private subdivision development standards, including our street standards. So all those are related. They all tie into that same bundle of concerns. And that kind of leads us back to where we started, which is our landscape amendment. So we actually have done a bit of work on this. This was started back in late July, early August. We were able to obtain an intern from one of our local universities. He had some supervised research that he did over the last several months of several codes, different codes throughout the western United States, looking at conservation standards, looking at examples of what other cities have done, best practices. The summary of his findings were presented to a group of staff, including our engineering staff, planning staff, just several weeks ago. So we're about in the time frame. We're about in this range right now, February, March range. You can kind of see our projected time frame for that. We have on our next Planning Commission agenda a discussion of his findings, which would be followed up in March with an actual draft ordinance that would go to a work session and be discussed at that work session. That would be followed up again with a public hearing, and then with, of course, coming forward to the council for review. I gave you each a sheet that's on the dais. It's a little summary of some of those amendments that I just talked about. As part of that, at the bottom, you'll see that proposed schedule for that landscape ordinance amendment. We're at a place where we can, we've got a lot of the research, the initial research that's been done. We're at a place where we can move that forward to the Planning Commission and City Council within the next several weeks. We would anticipate that we would be bringing it to you for a work session mid-April, potentially earlier than that, but probably mid-April for a work session with the council after we go through the Planning Commission process and talk with them about that. One other thing I wanted to point out on that sheet is that below it, there are some future items that we've identified. And these are just for your information. These are items that are on our radar screen, but because of other text amendments that we've prioritized, we haven't got to these items yet. One of those is storage containers in residential zones. We need to look at that as an issue. Another is short-term rentals. That's another one that comes up and that would be good for us to address. And then we have a need to do a comprehensive sign ordinance. And this one would be a longer-term project, but a comprehensive sign ordinance amendment is needed to bring our sign code into current standards. We've got some things that are out of date, some things that are inconsistent, some things that are not addressed. We did a little one, if you remember, we did a little agricultural sign amendment just a little while ago. That was something we figured we could get done to help an applicant very quickly, but we do need to do a comprehensive sign code change. So with that, that's our schedule. Those are the things we've been working on. I wanted to point out one other thing. If you look at that chart up there, you've got the MU and MUTOD design standard amendment. As you're aware, we've had a lot of applications for mixed-use zoning in the last several months. This was something that was identified a long time ago by us as something we needed to tighten up our design standards, landscape standards, all those things for mixed use and MUTOD. We've been working on that for a while. We've prioritized it in the last several weeks. That's something that will be running concurrently with this landscape discussion. But it is something that's, again, a very large effort. We've had some initial research, which is kind of that light gray. We've had some very dedicated time to that ordinance in the last month or two, and we anticipate that'll come forward about that same time frame, maybe a little bit after the landscape ordinance, but about that same time frame. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can. That's some of the things that we've been working on. Oh, I almost failed to do this, and this is for my staff's sake. I want to just mention that with each of these text amendments, you can see that it's not unusual for us to have 5 or 6 of these going at the same time in various stages. This is just a small portion of the work that our planning staff does. They're also balancing applications for zone changes, applications for building permits, the subdivisions, site plan reviews, conditional use permits, all the other types of applications. So again, this represents a portion of the good work that they do. But they do fit these, the work on these amendments in as they can with these other important things that they do, including review of building permits, site plans, conditional use permits, et cetera. So, okay, I've talked enough. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Mayor, may I? Chad, just a couple of questions, maybe clarifying the sensitive lands ordinance or sensitive lands amendments. That's being worked on simultaneously still. That's not being, because it says they're pending. That means you're not pending to start. It means it's, it's in.
We started in earnest on that in January. We have a committee that was just after we adopted the first round. We started in January. We've got a committee that consists of engineering and planning staff, but it's being worked on right now.
And
we met about it this week. So.
And secondly, the short-term rental that you have down here as future items, there's some short-term rental language in the ADU bill that might affect that as well.
That's right. Yeah, we've been watching that one very closely, and at this point, which is what a lot of cities have, how a lot of cities have approached these short-term rentals, is that they're not permitted or prohibited at this point in the city. We address concerns through the nuisance complaint process, but that it gives us the ability when we do adopt some standards to make them apply to everybody, because we don't prohibit or permit them at this point. So,
and just lastly, just also want to applaud your staff. I mean, obviously here at the City Council, but also as my experience on the Planning Commission, they get after it, and the fact that we can do all of this and still be within the 14-day and the 3-day stuff that Gary was talking about, and not be a city that's behind and being looked down upon by the state legislature is it's just a good thing that we have a great reputation. So thank you for all that you're doing and your staff as well.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks, Clint. Any other questions that I can answer?
No, just along those same lines, I'm sure the sign ordinance is going to come into play also with what's in front of the legislature. So.
Yeah,
that's
it's a big effort.
That may determine a lot of our decisions. Okay.
So Chad, just preliminary on the landscape ordinance, are you seeing major changes, just minimal changes? What kind of?
The research that our intern did indicated that there could be some pretty large changes to some of our commercial landscape standards that would be consistent with what a lot of communities have done to try to encourage low water use. One thing that we've noted is that in each of those ordinances, there's a lot of latitude still given to single-family residential, as far as rather than being very highly regulatory, they give options and let people decide for themselves on those lots. So it's a little bit more, I guess, that we've seen a lot more regulation for commercial and industrial type applications of landscaping, and a little bit more of a palette of options given for people in residential settings, rather than being very prescriptive in what has to happen there. But to that end, yeah, I think the commercial standards, you'll see a fairly big change that we'll be proposing, with some good discussion, we hope, about residential and how we want to handle that particular part of it. When I say residential, I'm talking about single-family residential, not multifamily. Multifamily, we would lump into that same commercial kind of category. But single-family, certainly, most of the ordinances that we researched were very, more of an approach of, here's a palette of options you have for a single-family residential home, and you can choose from these options. So.
Okay, that being said, I would just encourage the council to keep track of it as it's going through the Planning Commission, because there's no reason that we have to wait till they approve it to give our questions to them. It would just speed up things if we have questions to feed it to them as they're going.
Yeah, to us as staff, we welcome any questions you have, and any things you'd like us to consider as part of the review. I know, park strips will be part of our review as we look at these things, and how we handle park strips. And we've got folks at Weaver Basin Water Conservancy District that we're going to be working very closely with for best practices. So,
and as you all know, you can always attend those meetings and their discussions.
As long as there's only two of you.
No, you can.
Well, I guess.
You're just attending. You can attend, can't you?
So if we have more than 2 attending, we're okay, they just can't discuss anything, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll discuss that a little bit when we get to.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. We appreciate it. It's a lot of work that you and your staff has put into that. So again, thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, so as part of item 4, we'll continue on to part 2, which would be the water agreement. And Gary Crane's going to give us an update there.
Do you have a PowerPoint you need to?
Yes, there's one on there.
What's the name of it?
I either need to bring my glasses or I need to get closer. Sorry.
It's okay, you can sit here and I can't read it.
Can I approach the
Right there? Okay.
Careful, Counselor.
The older I get, the worse it gets, so, thank you. That's big enough. That is. So, just in answer to your question that you had a second ago as to whether or not, there's no problem with the city council attending planning commission meetings. That's not a problem at all. If you want to engage with the planning commission and you all want to be together and hear the same information, which would probably be my recommendation to you, what is really good is to do what you did with the general plan and have planning commission and city council get together in a meeting, to discuss those issues and find out where they're at. That's essentially that's the easiest and best way of doing it. That way you don't have to bring back to the council everything that happens, but you can actually get a total update. But attending the meetings, no problem. You can attend those. Participation in those meetings, you got to be careful because if there's a group of you and you're having to make a decision on that, and you got 3 of you there, then, if you deliberate, if you get up, Tom, and deliberate and say something, and then, maybe Zach gets up and says something, you're actually deliberating over a decision that you're ultimately going to have to make. So it's good to listen and get that input. It's good to be together with the planning commission and get that input. I strongly recommend that on something as complicated as that. But as far as being an active participant, you have a lot of influence over a planning commission that is appointed by the mayor, so be careful of that. Any questions on that? Is that okay? Okay. You guys do it right anyway, so we're good. Just a question regarding Case Creek Irrigation and the Layton City agreement. Years ago, one of my first jobs when I was a fairly new attorney in West Valley was, I remember another attorney was handling Case Creek Irrigation Company and said, I've got such a heavy load, would you mind handling it? And I remember saying, sure, that ought to be easy. A little company, no problem. And so I came up here, and I remember the very first thing we did was we went over to Junior Green's, his house. He opened up his garage, and he went up into the roof of the garage, and there's all these like scrolls, these plats were all rolled up. And that was essentially Case Creek Irrigation Company. That was all of their information that they had. And so he pulls one out, rolls it out on top of the pickup truck, and then wanted to know, why Layton had cut his line here and why they'd done this. It was one of the most frustrating experiences of my life to represent Case Creek Irrigation Company for a very short time. But I'm glad to say that since that time, things have improved considerably. You've got a board that appears to be very, very efficient. You've got a director that seems to be doing a very, very good job of directing. But the difficulty with Case Creek Irrigation Company is the difficulty that you'll eventually see with all of the secondary water companies in Layton. There's another one, Holmes Creek, and then you've got Davis Weber and the concerns there. And that is that when the older these get, the less, the lower the value of the thing, and the more it ends up in being a cost versus any type of value. The value is in the water. is in the actual water that these companies provide. The value is not in the infrastructure that they put in the ground. And there's millions of dollars worth of infrastructure that has been put in the ground and will need to be put in the ground at some point into the future. 3 years ago when we met together and the master plan was put together for water in Layton City, we determined that we had one of the greatest resources of any city in the Wasatch Front by having these irrigation companies that essentially had water set aside and put aside specifically for use within Layton City. What a great thing. And not only that, but we have 3 reservoirs that hold that water. And so we can distribute it on a very calculated basis. Those are great resources. You don't have them in very many other cities. I don't know another city that has that benefit. So the question was, and years ago, was how do we pull all this together so that in the future, as these companies disappear essentially, which is what they end up in doing, as the agricultural uses disappear, the residential uses come in, and the residential uses just are interested in just getting water during the summertime, getting pressurized water during the summertime. I'm going to take this off because it keeps slipping. But so what we determined was that we will wait, and on a gradual basis, as these companies essentially run out of agricultural use and begin to become almost totally pressurized, that we would take those opportunities to then incorporate those companies into our water system. I wish I could put a Gantt chart up there like Chad did and tell you this is exactly when this is going to happen for Holmes Creek, for Davis Weber, for Case Creek, but I can't. But I can tell you this. I can tell you that we have been working with Case Creek over the last couple of years to develop at least a relationship and an agreement with Case Creek Irrigation Company that covers a number of key areas in preparation for our taking over the Case Creek system. That's not a hostile takeover. It is a taking over of the expenditures, the costs that will essentially be borne by the city in improving the system, in making it better, and in providing new citizens out west water that will essentially supplement our culinary supplies and make our culinary supplies go a lot farther, 100% farther. We've got a lot, when you got a company that has over 3,000, the ability to serve over 3,000 new residents or residential units, that's a considerable asset to the city. And so we have been working since the day that the city decided to do this with Case Creek Irrigation Company, and Case Creek Irrigation Company has been working with us in order to bring us to the point where we can actually begin to sign an agreement and put together an agreement that will work for both the city and Case Creek Irrigation. So what I wanted to do is give you the high points of that agreement. I can tell you this, that they have hired a lawyer. David Wright is one of the best lawyers in the state when it comes to water law. We have our team working on it. We have Steve, our engineer, Terry Coburn, our public works director, and I need to introduce you to Mason Carr, who's, I don't know what to say about him, except he's fabulous. He comes to us from Parr Brown, and he comes with a lot of experience in the area of water. In fact, David knew him when he walked in the door. And so Mason has been working with us, and we're happy to have him and grateful for his input on this, on a very complicated agreement. During my 30 years here at Layton City, I've put together a lot of agreements, but this is probably one of the most complicated because on the other side, it's not as easy. It's not a unilateral ordinance that we're putting into place that you can do tomorrow or within a year or within. You've got a company that essentially has some pieces of it that are as disorganized as it was when Woody Green opened up his garage and took all the scrolls out of the top and showed me where they were, where different things were. I have to depend a lot on the people that were actually here when a lot of these things occurred in order to come up with some of the conclusions as to where these shares and where these shares are and what types of shares they are. So I'm going to go through what we've negotiated so far, and we've not come to a conclusion, and we've gotten to a point where staff is going over some of the recommendations that the attorneys have made on both sides. An agreement has bounced back and forth. I would term it more as a term sheet than an actual final agreement, because it's not final until you see it and you say, yeah, that's great, and their board sees it and says, yeah, that's great, that works for us. Then in addition to that, we have their stock shareholders that we have to deal with as well, that both the company and Layton City will have to deal with. When I say deal with, we'll have to make accommodations for. So if you take a look, the first piece of the agreement is kind of what they call a preparatory step to entering into an agreement. First of all, we got to get our thing together. We got to understand where all the shares are, what they are. When I bought my lot, I was told I have an acre of water on my lot, but I never did get an actual paper share for that water. And the majority of my neighbors are exactly the same way. They did not get an actual piece of paper when they bought their property. It's somewhere. It's probably at Case Creek Irrigation Company somewhere, but none of us have physical shares that are recorded. And for the majority of my neighbors, they don't really care. All they care is that when they turn the faucet on for secondary water, that they get water. And if they don't, Case Creek really hears about it. Case Creek Irrigation hears about it. And right now, Case Creek's a company of two individuals that try to keep up with all of this. And so it's quite a remarkable thing that they've been able to do that. It's also a remarkable thing that they've been able to expand in some of the ways that we're going to talk about in a second. But we have to establish the ownership. That's on them to do that. And they're going back and they've done that. They've done quite a bit of work on doing that. And we feel we know where all the shares are located and who owns them. And there are some questions. For example, over the years where we have actually treated shareholders like they were shareholders where they don't actually have a physical share, what is their status? That's a complicated legal issue, but it's one that we're having to deal with Mr. Wright. And accounting for all the shares, making sure that all the shares are accounted for. What are the rights of each of the shareholders? Are they all the same or are they different? When a person carves up a piece of property into 4 lots, now what happens to the share of water that was over those 4 lots? Those are complicated issues that they have to deal with, because the thing that we will need before we actually strike the iron, strike the anvil, is we need to know who the shareholders are, because those shareholders are going to have to make a decision. And it's going to be a big decision. It's going to be relative to the transfer of assets, the company's assets, into the city's name. So we have been working they have been working on this end of it, and we've been assisting them in working on each of the aspects that you see right there. Did you have a question?
I do, Gary.
Tom?
So how far do you feel like you have to go back on that?
You know, Case Creek's almost a 100-year-old company. And those rights are really, really old. That's what makes them so valuable. So we're having to go back as far as we possibly can to find those paper shares. If we can't find the paper shares, there's an accommodation for that in state law that we can actually use to be able to just indicate that those shares no longer exist or they don't exist, and the company would be the owner of those. There would be no shares. The company would be the owners of those rights. Or those shares.
So would that I guess include, I know one person who said that their shares, they just don't know where they are through the family, right? As it's handed down.
Yep.
So would they trace those back as well?
Yeah, they do have records that go all the way. Those are the types of things that we're having to deal with. That's what's taking a lot of the time that you identified. We're working on it, and they're working on it, working furiously on that. But that's one of the issues that they'll have to resolve, exactly that. And there's a couple of situations like that where they know they've got it, they just don't know where it is. The family doesn't know where it is. That sounds very familiar, actually. It sounds like one that we're aware of. So that's what we're having to do.
Gary, do they have
that's
to
part of what we're
provide
having to
then
do.
all of the shareholders, even though, like you say, it might be a quarter of a share or a full share, that entire list? Is that what, or
So-
at least identify all of them so we have an exact accounting of it?
Yes, we need to know who they are, and if we don't know who they are, there's a way of dealing with that, as I
Right,
indicated.
yeah.
But by the end, that preliminary step of finding the shareholders, a majority of the shareholders, and according to their bylaws, turning the assets of the company over to another entity, to the city, will require a resolution of the shareholders, and the shareholders must approve that resolution. And that resolution right now is, and has been in drafting with David Wright. And we've been preparing the shareholders. We've had at least one meeting I had one meeting before COVID with the shareholders where we actually told them a little bit about how that would work. We've had multiple meetings with the board to demonstrate, to talk about how that would work with David here as well. And so those are the things that we're having to process and to get completed. Those are out of our control, but are in their control. And there are two resolutions. One would be the resolution authorizing the transfer, and the other would be a resolution extinguishing or conveying the shares to Layton City. Layton City will be the owner of all shares necessary to handle the pressurized system. And that's probably close to 95% of the shares in the company. So that's a big deal. And that's a big preliminary hurdle that we've got to cross. And we've got to be able to handle that.
So Gary, just one quick question there. So say a family owns shares 20 years ago, they stopped paying assessments on it. Do they have a provision where after so many years of non-payment of assessment, it reverts back to the company to solve some of those problems? Or
yes.
Do you know?
Yeah. I go to my expert, but there is a solution in state law for individuals who have not paid their assessments.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would clear up some of those, I'm sure.
I think you're right. Yeah. And then the transfer of the pressurized system. We have to enter, and our engineering department has been hot on getting everything recorded, knowing where everything is prior to the transfer. That has to occur. We have to, and that's an interesting thing, because right across the back of my yard is a pipe that I found with a water witch one day as I was looking for a leak. And there's a lot of those. If you know, on the east side, Case Creek has a lot of lines that do not run in our streets. And we're used to, when the city puts together a system, we put together a system where the lines are located in the street. Over time, I think a lot of those will be relocated into the street. I'm going to leave that to Steve. That's his problem, okay? And Wes, I think, Wes Adams, who actually runs the water system, I'm sure he has nightmares over what we're going to do to him in a very short time. But we have to provide, first of all, an indication where all the infrastructure is, and then we have to know where the easements are, and those easements have to be conveyed to the city, both prescriptive and actual easements. They all have to be conveyed to the city. Everything from the dam, other than the ditches, and there's only about 4 or 5 ditch folks that are left, all those easements have to be conveyed to the city. And so we've been working on that, and we're making good progress on that.
So most of those old companies, a lot of those easements were never recorded.
Right.
Are you going to have to record all those now?
What they would do is they will assign their rights, whether they be prescriptive or actual, to us. And so the city can actually pursue them if they need to. But if they don't need to, if they're just easements that don't have anything in them, we can let them go. If they do have pipes in them, it may be that the city decides that we want to firm those up and actually make them, define where they are. And we're actually doing that with every development that comes in. We actually require the development to identify on the plat where those easements are and to assign those easements a width and a location. So
What about all the ones that are, like you stated a minute ago, that we know a lot of them are in the backyards?
yes, and the answer is yes. We're going to have to deal with all of those.
But you could probably transfer the assets and deal with that later, because
Yes.
you've got that prescriptive easement because there are pipes there, correct?
That's correct. So the agreement will essentially say that they convey everything to us, and so they will do that. There's a method of doing that through agreement and through transfer, just transferring in the agreement. Next one, loans and contracts. Weber Basin is a major contract that we want to make sure we don't lose as this transaction occurs, because they actually use considerable amount of Weber Basin water in the spring, and throughout the summer, whenever they get low, they'll use that water. They trade Weber Basin trades with Case Creek. We don't want to lose those agreements. We want to make sure they're assignable. So we've been looking at that and making sure with their attorney that those are assignable to us, or that we may be able to take some of them over. We've had that opportunity before with Weber Basin to do transfer agreements, and they've actually let us take them over. The reason they're important is because they're extremely they're good price is what they are, and so we want to make sure that that good price stays in place, because we don't want Bear River water price, right? We want the actual price that Case Creek pays or exchanges for those rights. Loan, there's a loan on the pressurized system. When Scott decided to expand and go out west, which is great, that's the whole reason that it's so profitable for us to use this company. When I say profitable, I'm talking water-wise. Where it's so beneficial for us to use it is because we do have those lines going out west. And those lines come at the cost of a loan that was made from the Division of Water Resources. And that loan we would assume, because it's entirely pressurized. So we've got to make accommodations to assume that loan, or to assume payment of the loan. And it's looking right now more like we will assume payment on the loan, because the company will continue to exist, but we'll just assume payment on the loan. Really quickly, reservoirs, those are an incredible asset to the city, not only for their water and their ability to hold water, but in the future for the ability of the city to own those reservoirs. We would look to, in the agreement, a process for eventually, when there is no more agricultural use, for having those reservoirs turned over to the city. And we're going to have to work that. That's a detail that we still have to work out. There are a lot of associated agreements with those reservoirs. You've got with the Division of Water Resources, the Wildlife Resources, the fish, the fishery, the hatchery, that type of thing. Those agreements all have to be assumed by Layton City once those reservoirs, if we do take over the reservoirs. But until then, they have to be maintained, and those agreements have to be administered. And so we would see to that. Representation, we've got a recommendation as to how the board would be set up, but we'll explain that to you another time when we got a lot of time to do that. But that was a big one, is where does the power lie to make decisions regarding the water, the reservoirs? Pressurized system, certainly us, but the water in the reservoirs, that still concerns us, because if we don't control the water in the reservoir, we can't continue to keep the pressurized system charged. So we have to have considerable control over that. The assessments, agricultural and pressurized users, they need to be fair to both. And so that's been a source of conversation between us and the board, is how should those costs be allocated between agriculture, the last agricultural users, and the pressurized users. Layton will own 95% of the system, and so we have a big say in how those assessments are made and what those assessments should be. But we also want the agricultural users to have a say in that. Priority of water use, not that difficult, because we're trying to pattern this agreement as much as we can after the Weber Basin agreement that we've got in place that services over 4,000 connections. And so we kind of have a pattern for doing this. And Weber Basin, their management plan seems to work and probably will work for this. And I'm just going to really hop real quick. Operations, Case Creek still has to be operated. It will still have an employee or maybe two that manage the dams and keep the dams clear. And then there's training for our employees that has to take place. And we look at doing that as soon as this spring, beginning to train our employees this spring in the Case Creek system. Long-term plan for the dams and the water rights and the ownership interests of both of those is defined in the agreement as well. And what we've recommended is that we get together with you to show you what we've done so far in putting together the agreement. Staff still wants another couple of shots at it. We were going really, really well and very, very quickly until COVID hit. But the main thing that has to be performed before we can go any farther is for a resolution to be drafted and presented to the shareholders. That was shut down last January, February. In that area, we were going to actually hold a meeting where the shareholders could actually look at the resolutions and make a decision on them. We're not going to be able to do that. We're going to have to figure out another way of doing that, but that's Case Creek that will need to do that. And then the liabilities and dispute resolutions mechanism. We've got an idea for that too that is in a format of an agreement. We will spend time with you in a work session, I think, explaining all these things to you. Any questions that you might have regarding, I mean, there's 1,000 questions because we have 1,000 questions, but we want you to know that this has not stopped. It is a gradual process because you're dealing with a willing but cautious other party and represented by counsel, and so they're getting good counsel. That's a big thing. You know, things go smoother when you got a good attorney on the other side, on both sides. And so if there's any questions I can answer real quick for you so that we don't overrun you. Yes.
Gary, just one thing, and the staff, I know that, again, I appreciate your attention here and really diving into this because I know it's a precious resource that we need to deal with. But as we move along, obviously we will have a work session. But I really believe that it would behoove this body here if we can also set up a tour and actually be able to go out and see the entire water system. I know that, we've got several tanks up on the side, but then also show how the reservoirs will come into play where you plan on putting in the main trunk line and that. I think that would help them as they go forward with this decision as well. So I'm not saying right now, I'm just saying that's something that I'm going to request that we do that.
Bring your snowshoe. We'll likely do that in the spring. That's a great idea.
Yeah, or even
So,
summertime. I mean, I'm
yeah.
sure this isn't going to be done that quick, but I do want to have a physical.
But we want
tour
you to
on
know, we are pushing this forward as fast as
You
they
are.
will move.
Thank you. Yes.
And so there are some things that are hurdles that we have to get over before we can go to the next step. And one right now is we got to get those shareholders together. And we've been doing a lot of footwork, groundwork on that. But now it's time for the meeting. We're coming really close to the time for the meeting and to get that started.
Very good.
One
Ask a
suggestion
question?
of mine, Gary, would be to meet
After
with
Tom.
us because I may not be in agreement with what
I'll
you're
let you.
presenting to them.
Okay.
So where you're negotiating on behalf of the city, I think it would be good to have a meeting with the council to say, yeah, the things you're presenting we agree with or we don't.
Yeah, just so you know, we would never move forward.
Yeah, but I mean, even
Yeah.
in some of the preliminary stuff, to save
Yeah.
you going down this road when we don't agree with that, for instance.
Okay. We'll do that. Certainly we'll do that.
Okay. One more question.
Quick question, Gary. This came from the discussion of the water rate increase and the infrastructure that needs to be put in place out west to, like you mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, to help with the culinary water demand or supply.
Mm-hmm.
So how much of the infrastructure, the projects, I mean, we've postponed this decision to raise the water rates. How much of those projects, the secondary projects, are connected to this agreement, to this right here, that Case Creek water?
Maybe I could have our engineer respond.
This is the reason for, this is, okay.
This
That
is
was my,
why we would need
This is-
to finish that.
I just wanted to
increase.
get that on the record that that's what we need to do.
And the sooner the better.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
It wouldn't be
for that, so.
absolutely all of them. There's a small amount with Holmes Creek, but it would be the majority by far.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah,
you.
there is. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could, like Tom said, there are a few that are specific to maybe Holmes Creek or Davis Weaver, but the vast majority of them would be part of the system out west that all three companies could feed into. So it would be the majority of all the projects.
Thanks. So, and maybe I just make this point, that we've got to move this forward. They have to move it forward. We have to move it forward. And to your point, Tom, their shareholders are probably going to give them the same permission you're giving me. And that is that they'll do a resolution. The resolution will provide for the transfer of those of Case Creek's shares to the city, predicated on the finalizing of an agreement between the city and the company. You'll give me permission to negotiate an agreement that is acceptable to you as we move forward with this, so that we can move both sides together. There's nothing in those two resolutions that would supersede what you do here. In other words, they're not going to be able to say, we're going to go ahead and rush forward with the plan without Layton City approving the plan. You have to approve the plan. And so, but the problem is we've both got to move together. It's like two gunslingers that are both, just kind of waiting for the other one to draw. So I hope you understand we got to move both sides.
Yeah, I understand that,
Okay.
but from my perspective, there's a few things that I can see from the city side that I don't agree with yet, now.
Yep.
To redirect you, so when you do present it, you would have my agreement.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And ultimately, you'll have to approve whatever agreement we put together. So you as a council will have to do that. So hopefully, the underlying premise of incorporating Case Creek into our water system, you decided that 3 years ago. So it's just how we do it is what we're looking at, and what's involved in doing it. But whether or not to do it, that decision's been made. It's a good decision. I think it's a good decision because I don't know where you get that much water. I just don't. They're just not making, although the last couple of days, I think there's probably a possibility that somebody's making water for us. So anyway, I'm not meaning to make light of it, but I think it's a good decision to move forward. It's just, you're talking about the details of how to do that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, because the master plan was agreed on, but it could move forward with Case Creek operating independently of the city in the future or not. That's where the agreements have to be agreed on by everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, council, we're right at 1 minute before the hour. We'll bring this meeting to a close and allow you to stand up, stretch. If you need to take a quick break, go ahead and I'll wait for you to return. Kim, are you good? Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting, February 18th of 2021. The start time is 7:04. As customary, we have our council members kind of conduct the beginning of our meeting with a prayer and a pledge. So this month, it is Mr. Councilman Tom Day.
So tonight will be led by the pledge by Council Member Fitzpatrick, after which Council Member Dave Thomas will give us an invocation to start the meeting.
Okay, please join me in the pledge.
Our Father in heaven, as we come before Thee as a group of citizens, as a group of elected officials, as a group of city workers, we ask for Thy blessing. We ask that Thou will watch over us as we discuss, as we talk about things, as we try and do the best things which we can do for the city. We ask for Thy guidance. We're thankful for the many blessings which we have in this great city, the things that have been here for years and the things that have been planned out by those before us. And we pray that we, as individuals, may be able to honor them by doing the same thing. We're grateful for this great land, grateful for the opportunity to be here at this time. And these things say in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Council, for participating in that. I'd now like to move on to item number 2, which is any municipal event announcements. Council, does any of you have anything? Oh, heck, I did that last time. Sorry. Let me retract that. I need to back up to item number 1, which is our minutes from December 3rd. It's a council work meeting from December 3rd, 2020. So council, do you have any corrections to that? If not, I'll take a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of Layton City Council work meeting December 3rd, 2020, as written.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Now we can move on to municipal announcements. Council, do you have anything? Okay, I'd like to make just one, and I know that this is kind of a very good program that will take place this Saturday. It's called the Honor Walk 365, and it's part of the 9/11 Memorial Tribute. And the folks that are putting that together, they actually want to have a kickoff of this tribute that is now going to be displayed at the Ogden Mall. However, they want to hold this kickoff here in our park at the Vietnam Memorial Wall. So anyone who would like to participate, you're welcome to come. It will be Saturday at 11 a.m. sharp, and they will be honoring several folks from our city as well. So I think it would be good for all of us to show our support and attend this. Don, would you like to mention any about just a recap on the survey?
We got to get this mic fixed. There is a well-being survey being done in Layton City. We're one of 29 cities across the state that was selected to do it. It's through Utah State University. And it really, we need citizen involvement in this. If you go to the city's website, it will give you, or their Facebook page, a link to the link to do the survey. It's short, no more than probably 5 or 10 minutes. You need to be a Layton resident over the age of 18. And we do need more men to fill out the survey, so it's not all balanced towards women. The survey covers questions regarding our own personal, physical, and mental health, those kinds of things, as well as how the city meets our needs of well-being as well. We have until next Wednesday, the 25th of February, and I know it was also sent to city employees, so if any of you city employees live in Layton, it would be great if we could have you complete that survey as well. This will provide some information that we as a council and as the planning department will probably be able to use, and probably Parks and Rec moving forward. It's really going to be a good survey results.
Okay, thank you very much. In addition to that, I know the Utah League of Cities and Towns is having an essay contest for for children in the age, I'm having a heck of a time. Basically, grade 4 and grade 7. They're being challenged to write a essay on what they like about their city. And it's through, like I said, it's sponsored by the Utah League of Cities and Towns. There's some very good cash prizes for both the winner as well as the school. That can be found on the Facebook page. I know several of the council members have also put it out there, trying to encourage those kids, and certainly any teachers. This would be a great assignment for your kids to write an essay. And I believe that deadline for submitting those essays would be April 23rd. So again, look on the website. Well, that one's not listed on the website yet, but perhaps we'll get it there, but certainly on the Facebook pages. I think that's pretty much it on municipal announcements, but at least we finally have some. Okay, we'll now move on to item number 3, which is our verbal petitions and presentations. And it is with great honor for me to be able to introduce Mr. Val Shoup, who is with the Utah Chiefs Police Association. And I will not take under any thunder from this, but I will say it's a long time overdue on this acknowledgement. So, Val?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to be here as the Executive Director for the Utah Chiefs of Police Association. I'm joined by Chief Pauline Jacobs of the West Valley Police Department, who's also one of our Vice Presidents over the Region 3, which Layton is a part of. And I appreciate her being here to support Chief Swanson. As you know, our conference last year was canceled in St. George. We wanted to invite the mayor, of course, and the council, or anyone who wanted to be there, to make this presentation to Chief Swanson, but that didn't take place. So having said that, we're going through and making these presentations to councils so that they have the opportunity to have their people honored as well as should be. So I briefly just want to go through the nomination that was presented to us, and this is for Chief Swanson for the year 2020. And I'll just briefly go through this with you so you understand why he was nominated and why he was chosen. And I can say on a side note that I've known Chief Swanson for a long time. I was a chief of police for 18 years. I've known him for a long time in law enforcement. He's an excellent chief, and you've done well. And I know he serves this community very well, so I want to say that. So having said that, Dear Utah Chiefs of Police Association, it is with sincere pride that Layton City nominates its chief to be honored by the Utah Chiefs of Police Association for his service in a specific instance, exemplary performance of general duties, or an extended period of time. Chief Alan Swanson is a 30-year law enforcement veteran and professional. In 1990, he began his career as an agent with the Indiana State Alcoholic Beverage Commission. He joined the Layton Police Department in 1992, where he has served in various positions, including 10 years on the SWAT team and over 4 years as the commander of the Davis Metro Narcotics Strike Force. Chief Swanson is a graduate of the Drug Enforcement Administration DEA Drug Unit Commanders Academy. He graduated from the Federal Bureau of Investigation FBI National Academy Session 232. His work and leadership continued, and in 2008 he was promoted to Assistant Chief. Then, after a nationwide search, he was appointed as Layton City's Chief of Police in May of 2015. Throughout his career, Chief Swanson has always been a cop's cop. He is routinely found backing officers in the field, making investigatory and traffic stops, and ensuring he does all he can to show, by action and example, his support for his officers. This in turn has instilled the confidence in Layton's officers that all officers should have in their chief. Being the chief, he finds himself on the city manager's executive staff. In that role, he is a valued advisor, providing additional and alternative insights to the city manager and other department directors. Here are some of the examples of Chief Swanson's service and accomplishments. He currently serves, and this is as of 2020, things may have changed a little bit, so keep that in mind. He currently serves as the chair of the Davis Metro Narcotics Strike Force Executive Board. Chief Swanson is current and active member of the Safe Harbor Board of Directors. As this association is aware, the Lethality Assessment Protocol, LAP, is a valuable tool that was universally accepted within the first 5 or 6 years, with Chief Swanson being in a key leadership role. Chief Swanson is current appointee to the Utah Peace Officer Standards and Training Post Council. That is a very important position, I might add. I served on that council, and it stands for the standards that our police officers have to meet, so they have a very important job there. Chief Swanson is a valuable member of the Davis Behavioral Health Advisory Council, tasked with shaping and implementing procedures for the new Davis Behavioral Health Receiving Center, which is a first of its kind pilot program in Utah. He has continued to support the Crisis Intervention Team, CIT program, by hosting multiple training academies each year. He has developed, recommended, and implemented a number of programs in Layton to retain and attract quality applicants. Chief Swanson is an advocate for his employees. The chief places his officers in positions where they can excel. Under his watch, his officers have received numerous awards and recognitions. Encouraging his team and providing them with the opportunities for success, with the citizens being the benefactors. He demonstrates his commitment to the public safety, the quality growth of the profession, and the development of that core attribute of service with integrity. As a member of the Utah Chiefs of Police Association, Chief Swanson has been an active member and advocate for law enforcement. He is active at the state capitol both during and in between legislative sessions, and I might add that I know for a fact that he's been involved very heavily down there, especially with all of the law enforcement bills that are down there this year, which we extremely appreciate. He tracks bills, provides input, and advocates for public safety whenever he has the opportunity. His reputation and integrity have solidified his credibility with his colleagues and with lawmakers. His activities and influence extend well beyond our city, and they are for the greater good. Our confidence in his leadership and abilities is experiential and well-founded. It is based on our direct relationship with his leadership and work and our observations of the department's results based thereon that we unequivocally submit this nomination. Sincerely, Joy Petro, Layton City Mayor. Well, having said that, if Chief Swanson would come up. Chief Swanson, we're proud to present you with this plaque. It says the Chief of the Year of 2020 presented to Alan Swanson, Layton Police Department, for outstanding professionalism and leadership in law enforcement, serving the community and citizens of Layton City. Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you. I'm very humbled by this, and I probably should have prepared a speech. But what I would like to say is, first, thank you, Mayor and City Council, and also City Management for your support. It's very appreciated. Would also like to thank my family, my wife, Michelle, and daughters, Rachel and Chantel, for their support over many years. And I think it's really important for me to recognize and thank the men and women who work at the police department. And that's all of you, whether you're in records, whether you're an officer, whether you're an administrative assistant. You all, it's because of the good work that each of you do that allows me to stand up here. And so I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful for Assistant Chief Mark Chatelain and all of my patrol lieutenants who because of the work they do, it allows me, to go out and do some of these extra side things like SIAC and like post council. It takes me away from the office a lot, but I don't worry because I know these guys are going to keep the department running smoothly. So thank you all for your support. Thank you all for your service to this community. It's appreciated very much. And I'm just honored to do this job, so thank you.
Well, so, Chief, that is very well deserved. We know how much you work on our behalf and on behalf of the citizens in keeping us all safe. And I just want to say that what a great opportunity. I know last year was our centennial year. And the fact that 2020 is a monumental year for this city, but to also have you honored as the Chief of the Year for the state is just caveat to that. And I just want to commend you because that, after reading your bio, you can see why you deserve it and you need to own it. Don't be shy. We love you. We want you here, and keep on doing what you're doing. You've got a great force. Okay. Sure, go ahead.
Chief, I hate this. You're serving in a time when we need something more than leadership. We need great leadership. And that shows in the people that are sitting behind you. I don't think you sent out an order saying you better be here for this, but they're here. And that shows me what they think about you. And you have to do something which is hard right now. It's not easy. You're not the most popular person on the block. And those that support you. And I know I speak for council. It's, if we don't have the greatest police force in the state or the nation, I don't know one better, unless it's a one-man Barney Fife who only has one house in his town. I don't know. But you do a great job, and it shows through the people, the men and the women that support you and do the things which aren't easy right now, and I applaud you for it. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you again. We thank everyone for your support here, and I got to say that I was just brand new in the office of mayor, and then I saw that come across my desk, and I could not resist. I had to turn in that application, and I'm just proud of you. So, and in fact, our entire force. And you're a great leader. So, thank you again.
Madam Mayor, may I just?
Sure.
Chief Swanson, we had some. I think we all remember this past summer. There was some unrest because of the murder of George Floyd, and police departments across the nation were on, put on standby and were nervous. We had I remember summer afternoon, we had an incident in Salt Lake City. I think we all remember that. It turned a little violent, and so I was concerned, and I know Mayor Petro was concerned, and sent a text to Chief Swanson and said, "Hey, what happens if something happens here?" And he's like, "Councilmember Morris, we've already got it. We've got a plan. We're going to be okay. Here's what we'll do. He was
5 steps ahead of
exactly." And I appreciate that, and I felt safe, and our residents should feel the same way, that we've got a great force and a great leader in Chief Swanson, and just appreciate everybody and their efforts in keeping us safe. And I agree with Councilmember Thomas, in a time that it's not as popular to do what you do, and I truly appreciate all that you do for me, for my family, and for the residents of Layton. So thank you and congratulations.
I guess I'm going to take an opportunity too. So as my position on the council, thank you, Chief Swanson. And thank you to all of you that are here with him, and to the officers that are not here with them. I really do appreciate all of their service. But from a personal perspective, Chief Swanson, I'm embarrassed my son's sitting in the audience. Thank you for what you do to protect these men and women that work for you. As a mother of a law enforcement officer, it's hard. And as a spouse, it's hard. It's hard to watch the news these days. It's hard to see the criticism because they're criticizing your family. And I just really appreciate everything that you've done to provide a good atmosphere, and to all of you for the support you give one another and this community. I appreciate it very, very much.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate everyone for being here again, and thank you for your comments. Certainly, you guys don't need to sit through the whole meeting, but you're more than welcome to. No. Okay. I'd like to move on to item number 4, which is our citizens' comment. So this portion of the meeting is for any citizen who is here who would like to bring any questions or concerns to our attention, or accolades would be nice as well. No, I'm just teasing. But you're welcome to come up to the podium. If you could, please state your name and address and for the record so that our recorder can have that. Sure.
You said accolades, Mayor.
Oh,
Mayor, it's a pleasure to be with you. Well, that's what we're here for. Mayor, council members, I'm Darren Brush, president of Davis Technical College, and I have with me Marcy Valdez, the director of our Davis Tech Foundation, on which our good mayor serves as a board member, and we appreciate you, Mayor. You mentioned earlier that last year was the 100th anniversary, and I don't think it came quite off like we had all hoped. And I understand that we've got some things planned for this year, and so it threw a little kink into our works too, so we're a little late with this. But we recently had 3 students who were blind complete, as you know, Mayor, training in machining. And they created for you 100 commemorative medallions for the 100th anniversary of Layton City. Wow. And this is one of the large ones. There are 2 large ones, but then there are 100 smaller ones. And we wanted to present those to you on behalf of Davis Technical College to commemorate this year and the 100th anniversary, and give those to you so you can pass those out to folks that you'd like to have them. So, in behalf of Davis Technical College, our board and our foundation board, we can congratulate you on 100 years.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, and I got to say, this is totally by surprise. I had no idea. I would have never said that.
Marcy and I thought
So
we could go and
apologize.
see Mayor Petro, or we could come to the meeting and show that we really love you and appreciate you. So that was our plan. Did we cover it, Marcy?
I think we did.
So if I may, I'll leave those there. Would you like one?
I think you need to present each one of the council members one yourself.
Be great.
Because, I mean, that's awfully nice of you to do that.
While you're doing that, I had the opportunity to watch the video of those students
Wow.
that you put out, and it brought tears to my eyes
Thank
to
you.
see what you guys have done to help those students gain a career. That they can take a marketable skill out into the community. It's just amazing what they were capable of doing. That was just a great, great video about them.
Thank you so much for saying so. Thank you.
Well, Davis Tech is a great college. I mean, not everybody wants to, be in the academic side, but the trades that you guys and the different schooling you offer, I mean, I am so impressed. And I know that several students that have been through there and have gone on to get a higher education and continue in those professions. So thank you for all that you do there.
Oh, thank
I really
you, Mayor.
appreciate it.
We're proud to serve the community, and you have right here in the backyard the largest technical college in the entire system. We take our role very, very seriously, and to the audience, if you have any kids or family members, we'd love to help them out. So thank you again.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Good
you.
to see you.
Thanks for coming. Is there anyone else who would like to have a citizen's comment?
Hi. The Davis County Library System has been.
Can I interrupt you just quickly?
Yes.
Do you mind giving your name for the record?
Hi, my name is Isabel Wynn, and I would just like to bring something to your attention. The Davis County Library System has been. They have a librarian at the door, and whenever you walk in, they ask for your name, they ask for the ages of my children, and then they also ask how long you plan to be at the library. And this is concerning for me. I feel like I'm being profiled just to come to the library. And is there any good reason why they're taking this information, or why I shouldn't be concerned as a citizen?
Well, I cannot speak for the library. However, I would only speak to probably COVID and the contact tracing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably needing that. But this is, we can actually elevate your concerns to the county, because that is controlled by the county.
I did stop by the library today, and I asked the librarians, well, why do you need my name?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they already have my information tied to my library card. They know what I'm checking out. I assume they have surveillance cameras. So I feel this is quite unnecessary. And the librarian said, well, we need to keep the number of people in the building under 40. Okay, well, that's a number. That's not my name or the age of my children. So I am concerned, because there's probably an easier way to do this. They could install a laser light at the door, and then the librarian's not taken away from her duties or his duties, and we're saving money,
It is a county facility, and I'll tell you, I went down to the county courthouse to meet with one of the county commissioners a couple weeks ago, and I had to have an appointment to get in the door.
Okay.
And I was met by a sheriff's officer.
Okay.
And I had to show my ID and all of that kind of stuff, and then be escorted to the area where I could go upstairs to where his office was. So I think it maybe is a county policy, not necessarily just the library. I'm sure it has to do with COVID. I know that the library is really encouraging people to make appointments to go in versus walking in. That's what we've been doing. And it is for that reason, primarily of contact tracing and to keep the numbers down. But one of the county commissioners that's over the library would probably be the one that, could do something. But like I said, I kind of think this might be a county-wide safety measure for their buildings.
It just seems a little overkill. It seems unnecessary. Because contact tracing, that seems kind of far-fetched to me. It's not like there's going to be an outbreak at the library. And I know the librarians are going to great lengths to clean everything and keep everything safe for everyone. It could potentially be, a point of conflict, because so many materials are going through. But at the same time, on the far chance that they need to contact trace someone, they have what I've checked out. Like, they know I'm there. They have the surveillance footage. So it just seems very invasive, especially since they're publicly funded. And, right now, while the schools are foundering during this time, where I'm responsible for educating my own children and making sure things work out for them in their education, it just makes me feel like a criminal walking into the library. I feel like I'm being profiled.
Well, I'm sure that's not their intent. And like I said, we don't mind passing this on, and certainly you're welcome to go ahead and call the county as well.
Okay.
And I do know that Commissioner Kamal, I think, is over the library, so you could actually ask for her specifically.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to approach? Okay. Hang on, we probably need to clean the mic.
I got it. I'll take care of it.
Okay. You've been well trained on this already.
I've seen it a few times. Hello, council members, Madam Mayor. How are you guys today?
Very good. I'm going to have to remind you to restate your name.
Yes, of course. My name is Daniel Denhalter. I live at 233 Cold Creek Way in Layton City, 84041. I'm coming to you guys with the same concern. I appreciate the attention, the 5 seconds of eyes on me that I get to talk about and complain about this. I just like to paint a picture a little bit more for you of something that happened this last week on Cold Creek Way. A neighbor of mine saw a gentleman, a construction worker, speeding in an F1 or F350 down the road, probably going about 60, 70 miles per hour, stepped in front of the vehicle to stop him because it was dangerously fast. He was pulling a trailer. After an altercation that I witnessed, the driver proceeded to peel out with a trailer, losing control of the trailer, watching it swerve back and forth as he sped through the stop sign not more than 100 feet away. At the time, there were 5 children playing on various corners of this street intersection. I attempted my best to get a picture of the license. However, the trailer was blocked. The license plate was blocked by the trailer, and I couldn't get a clear picture, but I did report it to the police department. Likewise, the police department, who I love, by the way. I appreciate what happened today because I think Layton City has one of the best police departments in the entire world as well. I saw a speed trap, a speed detector out on our block for the last couple weeks, which I really appreciate. I don't know where that data has gone. I hope that it eventually gets to you, or at least to our city manager. It's a concern. And this is just one of so many instances that I've seen personally, and as well as have been reported to me by my neighbors that are happening, and it's continuing and it's perpetuating. And because everyone is so frustrated in the world right now, it's just getting ugly and it's getting worse. And so any way that we can plead again with the council to implement some sort of traffic control, traffic reduction, traffic anything devices to slow the impact of speeding on that road so that altercations with neighbors and passerbys don't happen, so that we're getting to the point where people obviously are trying to take this into their own hands to try to protect our children. And it's our right to feel safe in the neighborhood that we live in. So again, I know I've been here plenty of times. I hope I come to you as respectful as possible. This is me reiterating with hopefully a little bit more of a visualization for it in a form of a story to express to you my deepest concern here. And I've reached out with the police department. I'm coming to the city council. The neighborhood is in its own way taking measures into their own hands. I'm asking for help. And I really want to help try to streamline this and do this the best way possible. If there's anything on my personal end that I can do, I am at your disposal. And if I can add one more thing, completely side note, and I know that you know about this, Mayor Petro, but a friend of mine, a legacy of Layton passed this last week. Dan Layton passed away, and I just wanted to make public record of it, that we lost an amazing person, a person tied to the founding of Layton, and it's kind of amazing that it's just after the centennial year. So anyways, that's the last I have on that. Thank you guys for all that you do. Thank you seriously for the care. I listen to the concerns of a citizen that's come to you, and I see the true concern and the thoughtfulness that goes into the responses. I really mean that. So thank you so much for all that you guys do for us. Thank you for being elected officials. I know it's not an easy job. And thank you for listening to my more than 15-second plea for your help and assistance in this matter. So thank you.
So Dan, I really appreciate you mentioning Dan Layton. That was awfully nice of you to do that. In addition to that, I want you to know that we have been listening to you. And we did challenge our staff to conduct some surveys and to kind of see exactly what's going on there. So we're not making decisions based upon emotions, but making decisions based upon facts.
I appreciate that.
And so I believe, is it Steve Jackson? Yeah. So, Steve, if you could, I understand you've got that information, and this will be the first that we'll be hearing it.
Oh, thank you.
Along with you. So, Steve, if you wouldn't mind reporting to us, we'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for letting me be here tonight. So as Mr. Denhalter mentioned, we did put a traffic counter out. We've been trying to get it out there for some time in between all of our other counts and dodging weather to make sure we don't damage our equipment with the winter storms we've been having. But through the week of the 8th through the 12th, we put a traffic counter out there just south of 250 north there. And just for some history, as we do our master plans, we look at roads, we have to classify them with different functional classifications. This road is considered a collector road. It's wider than normal residential streets for that reason, because it's meant to handle higher traffic volumes, and typically our collector roads actually have higher speed limits on them because of just the width, and the reason that they're built is to move volumes of traffic. So in 2016, the traffic counts that were used showed that we have 1,200 vehicles using that road. In 2018, we had a traffic count done, and the traffic numbers had decreased to 894 vehicles on that roadway, with approximately 370 going south and 524 going north. We set speeds in the city based on two criteria. One is we set a statutory speed, which is blanket, everything's 25 miles an hour that's not signed, or we use traffic engineering studies to set the speed to the 85th percentile. To remind you what the 85th percentile is, that's the speed at which 85% of the vehicles are traveling at or below. It's not an average. A lot of people confuse it with the average speed being that, but the 85th percentile speed in 2018 was 32 miles an hour. That's not uncommon for collector roads in our city. UDOT has done numerous studies, as well as national studies, indicate that regardless of what you post the speed limit at, based on the road, the design of the road, and how people are comfortable, that's the speed that they typically travel. And so 32 miles an hour would not be unheard of on a collector road. The numbers that from 2018 coincide with the numbers from 2021, in that the AM peak period time is 8 a.m. and the PM peak period time is 3 p.m., which coincides with the schools that Mr. Denhalter has mentioned before in the past. 2021's numbers show that the 85th percentile speed on that road is 29 miles per hour. The weekday ADT, or the average daily traffic, has dropped 24% from 2018 down to 674 vehicles, with 330 going south and 344 going north. During those peak times, the northbound AM peak is 47 vehicles and the AM southbound is 31 vehicles. And then it reverses in the PM to 44 going south and 43 going north. So it's indicative of people using that road. There's approximately 170 homes in that neighborhood, and that is the collector road for all 171 of those homes. So if you can imagine, or if you understand Cold Creek, it goes from Gentile all the way to Hillfield, and all of the roads connect into that road. So as Mr. Denhalter mentioned, there's 2,300 vehicles that were counted in that last week span. 3 of those vehicles were excessively speeding, and we're working with our police department to figure out who they are and figure out how to stop them. Obviously, it's one of those issues where unless the police are out there and catch them, it's difficult to enforce. But they're happening at different times of the day, and so we're trying to pinpoint when and where we need to do that enforcement. According to the numbers, the speeding is low. 4.6% is what would be considered speeders on that road. And the 85th percentile speed, again, is 29 miles per hour, which means that 85% of the vehicles are driving at that speed or less. So I don't want to take away from what Mr. Denhalter shared, but those are the numbers that we're seeing. We're not recommending any changes at this time. We do want to do another study north of 250 North, more close to the school, Again, we need to figure out the weather. Typically, traffic counts in the winter are difficult because we put out a traffic counter and it gets hit by a snowplow or a vehicle or something, and costs the city a lot of money to replace, and so we need to be judicious about that. But that's the next step, is we're going to look at the north section of Cold Creek Way to make sure that there's nothing abnormal in that area either. So is there any questions I can answer for the council?
I got one, Steve. When
Yeah.
I drove through the other day, I drove through intentionally to look, and there's 2 speed limit signs on the north end.
Mm-hmm.
So if you come off Hillfield Road, turn south, you'll see a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit
Mm-hmm.
sign. But if you come off Gentile and turn north, you don't see another speed limit sign till you almost get to the intersection. So can we move that sign down more towards Gentile? So when people turn on, it clues them in that it's 25 miles an hour instead of way up there.
Yeah, we can certainly look into where that placement is and if it's appropriate per the MUTCD standards that we have.
Because if you come off Gentile and head north, there's nothing that tells you speed limit till you get right up to the school almost.
Okay. Yeah, let me take note of that. We'll take a look at that one.
Just a quick question. I don't know how crossing guards are assigned. I know on Antelope by Lincoln Elementary, just that road there on Antelope, we do have officers sometimes there as school crossing guards to help. Are there crossing guards along?
There's one for the cross
I know,
from
and that's lit up.
across Hillfield.
But in the neighborhood, though, with kids coming.
No, there's not enough pedestrian traffic on those, or
Okay.
vehicle and pedestrian combined on those side roads to warrant a crossing guard there.
Okay.
It is up at the
That
north
was-
end near the school.
100 years ago.
Horses?
Yeah.
When the city was founded?
I was driving in Canada, and I went to my mailbox and I had a ticket. Said you were speeding, had a picture of me, of my truck, and I had to pay it. Do we do things like that now? I mean, could you, and as soon as I say this, and go away, I don't want to, I'm not saying anything about the police, I'm not saying anything about, the cost of things, I don't know how things work, but is there anything like that? Maybe I should ask.
So I'm going to defer to Gary, but my understanding is that there is a state law that prohibits photo radar from being used as a traffic citation device, and so we cannot do that. But I don't recommend that you confront drivers, but if you could certainly get a license plate number and a time of day and things like that, that's the most helpful thing that a citizen can do for us is, a photo or some kind of description that we can then pass on to our police department.
Well, we do have the thing that tells you how fast you're going.
Oh, the radar?
Yeah, the police have
shines
the police have a radar trailer that does indicate the speed. They have multiple places that they place those, and these data points that we give them help them determine where those are needed and if they'll be effective. So
the sad part is, it's not that everybody turns the corner and gasses it. It only takes one idiot to do something that you can't take away. You can't. It's done. It's over. And so, like I say, you can't sit a crossing guard or a person there, but I do have some ideas, and these are nicer ideas than
So,
before.
Steve, what's the criteria for the flashing speed limit sign? I know we have one on Layton Parkway as it makes that curve where the speed limit drops from 35 to 30. Is there criteria for those? I mean, I think most of us just don't even look at speed limit signs anymore. With my car, I look at what my car says it should be because now it tells me what speed limit is. But I always pay attention to that one coming around the corner because it flashes at me and tells me what I'm doing. Can those be put into residential areas versus a regular if there's a concern? And where this is a wider road?
we typically need those in places where there's a safety issue that is very apparent. The one that you're talking about is right where there is actually an S-bend in the road and there's a sight distance issue, and if people are not slowing to the appropriate speed, then we've created a traffic hazard there. So that's why that one is in place. Typically, when you put those types of signs in, they show an immediate effect, and then they wear off because people start ignoring them again, and so they're extremely expensive, and if they don't have a long-term impact on that speed, like you're mentioning, as you come around, it catches your eye because you're making the turn. Those are the times that we use those, but typically, if you put them in a residential neighborhood, they don't have as much effect as what you would hope, because people start to ignore them, and then people just drive what they're comfortable driving because the road is designed to be driven at that speed. So as a capacity comparison here, a level of service A, we talk about level of service A through F, and D is our minimum standard here. A level of service A on this roadway would be 5,000 vehicles a day. We're not anywhere near that number. If you went all the way to level of service D, it's 10,500, and we don't anticipate ever seeing that kind of a number on this road, but it is a collector. It's intended to connect to 1700 west to the south, and then all the way from Gordon down to essentially Layton Parkway in the future.
So it's interesting the numbers dropped from 2018 to 2021. Do you have any type of rationale behind that?
There's a couple of things that we've seen. The school changed the boundary for Sunburst Elementary and Ellison Park Elementary this last year. So we anticipate some of the parents that may have been taking their children to either North Davis Prep or Sunburst, or excuse me, Ellison Park may have changed to that new Sunburst Elementary. They're calling it a COVID factor, and I hate to keep bringing up COVID, but we did see a reduction in traffic over this last year. We're seeing different studies showing that some of it is returned back to 95% of where it was, and other times it's still a little bit down. But at this time, we're just assuming that a combination of COVID and also the school boundary change may have reduced these numbers a little bit more than they were in 2018.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I appreciate Daniel coming here and getting this information, because it's not something we would have been aware of. We don't live in that neighborhood. Those are your kids and your neighbors' kids around there, and it's important. And this isn't to say that the things that you saw didn't happen, because we know that you say they do, and we appreciate that. I appreciate the city manager and the city staff doing the diligent work on this, because if this is how we show the citizens that we really do listen to their concerns, right? And that we want to make a decision that's based on what the engineering sees and what the road studies see, and then try to find a way to make it better for everybody. So this is exactly how this is all supposed to work. So thank you for bringing it to our attention, and thank you to the staff for getting the numbers so we can know exactly what's going on. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to the other study once weather cooperates.
Yeah, thank you.
So I appreciate all that was said, and I appreciate the work that's been done on our behalf. I really do. A couple little items that I kind of had a feeling that these numbers would be down if a study was completed. There's two pieces of the puzzle that go into this that are completely unaddressed by that kind of study, that were addressed by another study, completely similar style, done in Michigan City, that there is a reporter bias based off of that. The people who actually see the traffic item on the road, that it actually significantly slows the speed. They're talking about almost a 20% decrease in speed reported from that. So if we're talking a 20% reduction in speed, we're talking that people are going 12 to 15 miles per hour over. That's reckless endangerment according to the state statutes. So just wanted to throw that out there, that this doesn't necessarily show the true speed, as much as I really appreciate the study that was done. The other item that isn't addressed by a counter is the ignoring of traffic stop signals. Our stop signs don't work. Simple as that. People are blowing through those. Every soccer mom in the neighborhood, if it rolls through it, California Stop, whatever you want to call it, which is also an endangerment, they don't look. So I appreciate so much everything that was done. I appreciate the numbers. I recognize that numbers don't lie. But I do recognize that there's bias in these kind of reports, especially when people see the recording device bright orange sitting on the side of the road and know what it's for. Immediately when that was placed, everyone in the neighborhood asked what it was, and they immediately knew. It's not hard to look it up online and find out what it is. That slows everyone down immediately because they think it's tracking their speed. So we have great residents in our neighborhood, but there is a frustration. And as much as the numbers show a decrease in everything that's going on, the general feeling for a good population, and I can't tell you that I recognize the numbers are low, but our city's only growing, especially out west, as you guys well know. It's only going to get worse. So if we can help figure out any way to help try to limit this still, it's still my same plea. It's not changed in any regard, regardless of the numbers, not in regardless of. I really appreciate hearing those. But it tells me that there's still a problem, especially if there's a 20% bias report. So anyways, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate you. Okay, council, we'll move on then to our consent. Well, excuse me, was there anybody else in the audience that would like to give us a citizen comment? Okay, seeing that there's none, let's go ahead and move on to our consent items. We've got one item on the consent, which is an interlocal cooperation agreement between us and Davis County, and our city recorder, Kim Reed, will be presenting this to us.
Mayor and council, this was discussed at last week's work meeting. So you have in your packet the resolution and the accompanying agreement for the oversight of the 2021 municipal election. Do you have any questions that I can answer for you?
Any questions or concerns?
We addressed the questions and comments.
So I did reach out to Brian McKenzie, the elections clerk down at Davis County, specific to your question. The difference in the numbers had to do with the adjudication of some of the ballots. Those are ballots when a voter fills out their ballot and they mail it back. They haven't clearly identified in the circle who they're voting for, and the machine cannot read the votes. So those are automatically kicked out, and takes a human being to actually look at the actual ballot to identify how did this voter want to vote. If they can't, then there's contact made. Anyway, once those are all done, those numbers are input somewhere. Those are separate numbers than everything else. What happened was once all of the ballots had been counted, they didn't, they have to, there is one button that they have to push that's going to take those tallies of those hand-counted ballots just from not being able to read, not the other hand-counted ballots. And those have to be added to the others. He said that they didn't do that last time. Once they figured out what the difference was, they were able to identify the mistake based upon the counts weren't balanced. They knew that that there was something off. They went through and audited the election. So we're required to complete a canvass of our election in a time period after the election day. And it's within 14 days of the election. So most city councils hold their meetings on Tuesday nights. This last election in 2019, and we hold our meetings on Thursday night, we had a city council meeting that fell within that time frame. So we went ahead and did our canvass. Some city councils, I know in the past I've had to do a special meeting. Some city councils have to do a special meeting depending on how those days fall. If it doesn't fall, they don't have a council meeting that falls in that time, they held a special meeting for their canvass. So we were the first city, just by timing, that they had given us our results for our canvass. That's what I initially presented to the council at the time. Then when they were going through and preparing every other city's canvas reports, that was when they identified, we aren't balancing, there's something wrong here. They stopped, they went back through, they identified the problem and notified us. That's why Layton City was the only city where those numbers changed. All other cities' canvas numbers were spot on because they hadn't done their canvas yet. So he says they have identified the problem. They've put something in place, a new procedure in place, so that it doesn't happen again. And he assured me, he said, come on, you guys, it's an election. You got to get one thing right, the numbers. That's what it is. He assured me that we won't experience a problem with this again.
Thanks, Kim. I really appreciate you.
Sure.
You, on the other, asking him questions. I'm glad you're on our team. I have great trust in you doing exactly what I would hope that any election official would do. So that was my only questions. So
Okay.
I appreciate you following up with that.
You bet. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, being that we only have one item on our consent, I would look for a motion.
Go ahead and make the motion to accept that consent item as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. That is Resolution 20-06.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the consent items. We'll now move on to our public hearing. We have two items on our public hearing tonight. Our first item is a community block grant, development block grant, which Mr. Morgan Cloward will be presenting that to us. So, Morgan?
Mayor and Council, good evening. This is the first public hearing for Layton City's Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. The Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, is administered by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Eligible activities with CDBG can include public services such as supporting Open Doors, Safe Harbor, Lantern House, Homeless Shelter, among others. Housing grants, including home down payment assistance, economic development activities and infrastructure, historic activities within eligible areas of the city. These activities are subject to requirements of HUD where they must benefit low and moderate income persons. For example, if we had a family that applied for a grant for home down payment assistance, if it was a household of four, their combined income for a household of four could not exceed $69,050. Layton City is considered to be an entitlement community by HUD. And that means HUD provides annual grants on a formula basis to entitled metropolitan cities and urban counties to carry out community development activities, including neighborhood revitalization, economic development, and improved community facilities and services. The annual action plan, which will start July 1st of this year and run through June 30th of next year. This will outline how the city will allocate its allotment of community development block grant funds during the upcoming program year. As I mentioned earlier, there's two public hearings that are required for this. First hearing is to gather information from the public concerning needs within the community. After we receive that that feedback tonight, and between now and the month of May, we'll have a committee that will draft a plan. And we'll have a second public hearing in the month of May, and that is to gather input from the public concerning the proposed projects that we'll have in that plan. And then hopefully, if everything goes well, then that plan will be adopted by the City Council. Some of our subrecipients that we've supported in the past and we support currently include the Safe Harbor Domestic Violence Shelter, Open Doors, Youth Court, Lantern House, Davis Community Housing Authority, and Have a Heart. Just to give you an idea of some of the sample expenditures that we participate in. You can see Home Fire Assistance, Youth Court, Lantern House, Open Doors, Safe Harbor, our emergency home repair rehab activities that we work with Davis Community Housing Authority on that, and also Have a Heart. We recently had a ribbon cutting ceremony on Angel Street. Family in that low to moderate income range was able to benefit from that home, beautiful home that the city purchased the lot and donated that to Have a Heart, and then an affordable home was built there for that family. And this slide just gives you an idea of some of the past allocations that we've received from HUD over the years. Those go up and down, mainly based on how things are going with the local economy in our area. It fluctuates just depending on how well we're doing. And this slide just gives you an idea of the funding that we've, in fact, this is what was allocated for the current program year. HUD just gave us a little over $368,000, and just have an itemized list of where those different allotments landed. And just to let you know, with our public service subrecipients, including Open Doors, Safe Harbor, and others, HUD has a requirement where we cannot exceed a 15% cap to support those activities. Just one item I failed to mention earlier. We do have our subrecipients. They've received their applications for the upcoming program year. The deadline to turn those in is March the 15th. And then after those applications come in, we have a community development block grant committee that gets together. In the past, it's been myself, Lon Crowell, my supervisor, Chad Wilkinson, our department director, the mayor, and a member of the city council. We get together, we look at the applications, and we determine allotments depending on needs and requests that are in those applications. So at this point, just from the council, if you happen to have any questions for me on the annual action plan?
I just have a question, because last year we were able to add the home repair for Layton residents. How did that pan out? Did people use it? I mean...
Yeah, we have had a fair amount of applicants for that. It's the past couple of years. It's been, especially the first year, it was well utilized. This current year, not as much, but probably the biggest hurdle with that, with just about any HUD activity, is income eligibility. A lot of the applicants just make too much money, which is a good and a bad thing. But yeah, it's still being utilized. It's been a good thing for the community.
Morgan, thank you for this once again. You mentioned that Layton City is deemed an entitlement community. Is that based on income of the city?
Your population has to be at least 50,000, and then also there has to be some needs. Some of the things you can remedy with money from CDBG includes blight or spot blight. And also, you could have some areas within your community where the specific census tracts, the income is below a certain level, and we do have that with the downtown, historic downtown area that qualifies. They call that an opportunity zone, where we can have different economic development improvement activities or other things that benefit that sector.
Is that updated yearly, where they look at those numbers?
Yeah, they look at those every year, yeah.
And my next question would be, I think was last year we got extra money that just showed up because of...
So what we did is we were able to amend our 2019-2020 annual action plan with some extra funding from HUD to take care of the coronavirus, and that was a little over $217,000. And we had a few activities that we allocated funds for that. That was a small business payroll relief effort. And in fact, I have some numbers on that. So far, we've for that we had approved $132,000, and we still have about $100,000 remaining on that. The problem with that one is the same with the Davis Community Housing repair. A lot of the applicants just make too much money to get assistance with that. Lantern House had an allotment. They've expended about $6,000 from that. Open Doors, they just are in the process of submitting some invoices for reimbursement. And Safe Harbor, their allotment was $55,000, and they have just about $6,500 remaining from their expenses.
Thank you. Do you anticipate with the new administration something similar this year?
I do. Yeah, that's what it's looking like. Yeah.
And then we'll come back together and talk about that. I guess. I appreciate your work in this. It's been fun to be part of that committee and to help businesses here in Layton and residents, and just appreciate your work and like a one-man band taking care of this. So I appreciate it.
Thanks.
And having the federal government looking over your shoulder. So thank you.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
the county. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Morgan. That was very good.
Thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so this is a public hearing, so I need a motion to open our public hearing. Well, think we can get comments on it.
So moved.
Okay, so your public hearing is now open. Should there be anyone here that would want to speak on behalf of item number A, which is the Community Development Block Grant, you're welcome to come to either side of the podium. Please, again, state your name and organization you're representing.
Carlene Kidman, 2056 North, 1650 East, Layton. Mayor, City Council, hi. Want to thank you guys for supporting Youth Court the way you do. We couldn't be doing what we do without you. If you'd come last night, you would have seen how great it was. We had some little sixth graders, so they were so impressed by the teenagers, and the parents just loved it to help these little boys not get in trouble anymore, and we're hoping they don't get in trouble anymore. But so we're in our 23rd year, if you can believe that, and we're going to be starting to recruit again next month and start doing training and stuff. COVID had a big hit on us. You know, we couldn't have hearings and stuff, but it helped us reevaluate what we were doing, and we have gone almost 100% by using computers. We've actually figured out with the kids' help how to do hearings over Zoom. So anyone who's sick or they don't feel comfortable coming out, we actually have Zoom meetings. And we had one night that we had actually kids here doing the Zoom. We had one of my youth court girls that was home that was not feeling well translating into Spanish, and family here in Spanish and another youth somewhere else doing so we had like 5 different locations doing this one hearing. And so it's just amazing what technology can do, and that these kids are amazing. They can help me because I didn't know how to do all that stuff. So, but we do have 25 youth trained right now, and we take turns because we can't have that many here. And just wanted to let you know just a couple numbers that we've had. I keep track of a lot of numbers, more than we probably ever need to know, but we have received 2,679 cases in the 22 years. And we're receiving cases now. It was slow, but kids are back to school and they're back to normal and getting into a little mischief. We've held hearings 769 times. So we've been in this room that many times using this facility, so we thank you. We keep track of the hours. So if you take the youth hours, the adult hours, the offender hours that they've completed over the 22 years, and then my hours, even though I get compensated with a stipend, we have donated back over 128,000 hours in 22 years. So we're giving back a lot to the community. We just want to let you know we really, really appreciate it. When we started youth court hearings in 1998, 51% of our cases were truancy. We haven't had a truancy case in 4 years. Truancy is just, it's not that it doesn't happen, it's just that with all the new stuff going on with juvenile court that won't see truancy cases, the schools have to take care of truancy on their own, and so it kind of, I feel it gets slipped through the cracks, but we tell them every year, I write a letter to all the schools, send us your truancy cases. But last year, after the truancy, it started becoming the theft and the retail theft cases. And then last year, something changed, and the majority of our cases are possession of marijuana. And we've only started seeing those cases in the last 4 years, and they are our top cases. Number 2 cases are e-cigarettes. And so you can see things are changing with the youth in our community, and it's good to have youth court to help them. And we have different classes. We work with the schools and new things. In fact, I got a new national class today that I'm checking out to see if it will help. I think our classes we have here are better because we do our own choices class, but I'm still checking out into it because there's a lot of national stuff. But we do have a statewide class that is very well done on vaping and how it hurts the youth, and I've taken the class, and the kids come out of it and they say, man, I really didn't realize that that's what vaping was doing. So it's been really good. So just want to let you know that we really appreciate all your support, and we would hope that you'd continue to support us as we still move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
I guess you have to clean it off. Is that best practice?
Yeah, preferably, and certainly, you're welcome to go to the other one,
I
too.
guess I could.
You can't ask Zach to do it. He'll jump on it.
Mayor, Council, my name is Lauren Avadomskis, and I'm the Executive Director of Lantern House, Northern Utah's largest homeless shelter and soup kitchen. We have been fortunate to receive funding from the Layton CDBG Fund for a number of years, and we've had the privilege of working with Morgan, who is a true champion for those most vulnerable in your community as well as those experiencing homelessness. Lantern House exists to aid the poor, needy, and homeless by providing them food, shelter, and critical emergency services. We provide a hand up rather than a handout. Our goal is to transition residents from shelter to housing, encouraging their sense of independence, self-sufficiency, and self-confidence. We are committed to carry out this mission while treating those who come to us with compassion, dignity, and respect. The support of the CDBG funding allows us to provide safe and secure shelter, hot, nutritious meals, case management support geared towards permanent housing, employment, self-sufficiency, and self-sustainability to those seeking services at our facility from Layton City. As the largest shelter in northern Utah, we serve individuals from all surrounding areas, including Davis, Box Elder, Weber, Morgan, and Cache counties. Lantern House collects self-reported data and enters information into the Utah Homeless Management Information System, also known as UHMIS. This is where we are able to track the services and the shelter nights that we provide and where the individuals are coming from. Since April 1st, the CDBG program has paid for 827 nights of safe and secure shelter to Layton City citizens experiencing homelessness. COVID-19 has impacted the lives of so many and continues to create obstacles for those experiencing homelessness. Since October 2020, Lantern House has been the identified quarantine and isolation facility for homeless individuals positive for COVID-19. With the support and direction from our local leaders and the community, we have made significant adjustments to our programs and protocols to prevent the spread of COVID-19. With the ongoing support from the CDG program, we will continue to provide food, shelter, and critical services to those in need, with sanitation and health being our number one priority. I want to thank you for the time and the consideration for an agency outside of your community that continues to make a difference for those that are from your city. I really want to express my my appreciation for Morgan and his hard work with our agency and the time that he puts in to caring about those most vulnerable. We do submit quarterly claims to Morgan for reimbursement, and on those claims we're able to provide individual stories about those who come to us and how they became homeless. Oftentimes we see those that come to us have been doubling up or in a situation where there's no longer safe or they're no longer welcome. So we will continue to provide that information to you, and we hope that you will continue supporting the CDBG program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do you mind if we ask you a couple of questions?
I just have just a quick question. So how do you verify residency that they're from Layton?
It is self-reported data.
Okay.
So,
and how do they get there? Do they get on the bus and they get there, or are they brought there by other agencies looking? How do they arrive there?
it's an array of that. So public transportation, if they're staying with somebody and they are no longer welcome at that place, they are brought. Referrals from agencies. We work very closely with Safe Harbor and Open Doors to find community members that are in need of shelter. So, and it's an array of those options, but I'd be happy to take any other questions. Hopefully I can answer them.
Is there a limit on the amount of nights that they get to stay there?
There's not. We have a variety of programs within our facility. Our residential program is up to 90 days. The average length of stay, usually outside of a 2020 year of COVID-19, is between 35 and 40 days. Right now we're experiencing stays about 52 to 60 days. So COVID has definitely impacted the services available to our clients, and affordable housing is something that we're continuing to fight for, because we know that that is a huge answer to this homelessness issue that we see.
Any other questions?
Just, do you supply housing beyond the facility there?
We have state and federal dollars that help relocate a family into their own apartment.
Oh, okay.
We work our funding is specific to Weber County, so if we do want to relocate an individual back to Layton City or Davis County, we utilize Open Doors, Rapid Rehousing dollars, or housing authorities vouchers or something like that. So it is a really community effort.
Do you still continue to help them even though after they come back here?
We do, yep.
Right.
We have a homeless prevention program where an individual that successfully transitions to stable housing, we can help them stay in their housing for up to 2 years. So we do like a monthly check to make sure they've got food in their fridge, they're paying their rent or anything like that. If there are concerns of rent not being paid, then we can assist with that. And that's made possible through state and federal dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Awesome, thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Should I wipe down?
Yeah, just be safe. I'd rather make sure we're taking extra caution. Thank you.
You bet. I'm Kristen Floyd. I'm the Executive Director of Safe Harbor Crisis Center. I apologize, Mayor. This will be a repeat. She
fine.
keeps hearing my stories. I want to say thank you for the support with the CDBG funds and how critical that is for our services. Prior to COVID, we were already seeing an increase in services of about 40%. Once people were required to isolate or quarantine when COVID became more prevalent, we saw an additional increase of almost 50% in requests for services. Last year, we provided almost 55,000 services to residents of Davis County, 50% of those services being to our largest consumers in both Clearfield and Layton City. You utilize 50% of our services are provided to residents of those communities. We've had a huge need to be able to increase services, and programming is definitely essential in providing services to those that are seeking safety and healthy lifestyles outside of the violence that they've experienced at home. We've recently expanded our services and are continuing to expand our services with a new building that is coming onto Layton Parkway that was donated to us from Intermountain Healthcare, Layton Hospital, that we will break ground hopefully in the next couple months to be able to expand our services and get ahead of the violence in the community. It's important for us to be able to provide some prevention services to the community, as well as not initiate homelessness. When you come into an emergency crisis shelter, you're immediately homeless. And finding affordable housing once we have created that homelessness is very difficult. So it's important for us to be providing what we would call outreach or outpatient services in the community to keep people safely in their homes and housed while we're trying to facilitate some safety measures for them, whether that be a protective order or healthy relationships or boundaries, counseling, children's services, and so forth. So these funds are critical for us to be able to provide services to those in need in Davis County, and more specifically in Layton City. So thank you for your support, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, I'm going to have you, if you don't mind, just kind of emphasize that the facility here that the hospital has donated, what exactly you're going to do there so that people can really understand,
Right.
because it's not a housing. So
Correct.
Go ahead and explain.
Yeah, and I had an opportunity to facilitate a town hall meeting with the residents, which I think was very helpful, but it is not the emergency crisis shelter that will be in that facility. It's more, the best way that I can describe it is administrative offices. So we do have clients that come in that are not in need of emergency crisis shelter services, so they're housed already. They don't need to leave their homes or in a safe enough place to be able to stay where they're at. But in those offices, we'll be providing free therapy, children's services. We'll be facilitating any legal assistance that they might need, maybe it be a protective order or something of that. We do psychoeducational groups, so it's those type of things that will be facilitated in that new building. No overnight stays.
Yes, thank you. And I'll go one step further by saying that as part of your outreach, you guys are, well, actually, it's not Safe Harbor, but Council, just so you know, I know the hospital is willing to plant trees along that fence line that I know that we heard a lot of concerns from those folks. However, I think they're going to wait until the building is erected before they plant those trees. But at the same time, that just shows the good partnership here between the hospital, Safe Harbor, and of course, listening to our citizens. So thank you, and thank you for reaching out to them.
Yeah, we absolutely want to be good neighbors, and so we did come in and facilitate that town hall meeting with the residents that had some concerns, came up with some solutions that we will look at once we get the building in place and can really identify where we need some adjustments.
Okay, any other questions, you guys? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Kristen. Okay, is there any other public comment regarding the block grant agreement? Okay, seeing that there's none, and this is the first of a couple of different public hearings on this item, we will leave this meeting open, but we will go ahead and move on to item number B, which is our rezone request and plat amendment. No, we don't. I don't think we close it because we've got another public hearing coming up. Point of clarification there, Mr. Attorney? Do I need to put...
Or do you need a motion to keep it open?
I mean, we open the meeting, and I know that we leave it open, right? Because we go ahead and close this one? And then open a new one in May? Okay, all right.
It's a totally separate hearing, the second one is.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that.
And there are no comments.
Okay, so for point of clarification here, we have checked, and there are no any additional comments regarding the community block grant agreement. So with that, council, if you want to make a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the, did you close the public hearing? I just closed it.
Okay, is there a second?
I want to approve Morgan's plan.
Second. Gotta wait for the plan.
I want to approve it.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Since this is a public hearing, I will take a roll call vote. I'll start out with Councilman Morris.
What am I doing?
Just voting, yea
Just
or
say
nay?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, just say yes.
Sorry.
Okay, Councilman Thomas,
Yes.
Councilman Fitzpatrick,
Aye.
Councilman Boxham,
Aye.
Councilman Day.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, and sorry for that confusion there. We will now move on to item number B of our public hearing, which is a rezone request and plat amendment, as well as a subdivision plat amendment. There's two different motions here.
That's right.
Okay,
Yes,
so-
thank you, Mayor, Council. This is an application for, as you said, two different items. First is a rezone from CH and R18 to CTH, which is our condominium townhome zone. And there's also an accompanying plat amendment to the Rosewood subdivision plat to facilitate this zone change. Go through a really quick background on the property. This is a property located on South Fort Lane. Excuse me, 471 South Fort Lane. You can see the approximate location of the property on that slide with that red dot. It's on the south portion of the city. This is a little bit more detailed view. You can again see the property under consideration tonight. There are two separate zones at this point that constitute the property. You've got CH, which is our kind of heavy commercial zone, highway commercial zone. You've got R18 to the rear of the property, which is a single-family zone with an 8,000 square foot minimum lot size. To explain this zone change and plat amendment, I think it's easier to use a picture. So I'm just going to show briefly the zone change boundary, which is outlined in white. This includes the proposed change from CH, which is the front portion, the front or west portion of the property, and then a portion that's zoned currently R18. Both of those areas would be proposed to be changed to CTH, again, condominium townhome zoning. As part of this application, the applicant is looking to create a more uniform property line along that east property boundary. So they are acquiring a small triangle piece of ground from a lot to the east. That will require a subdivision amendment. The subdivision amendment is shown here on the screen. That plat amendment will essentially create two lots, really just adjusting the boundaries of one of the lots and creating a new buildable parcel. Both of those properties will remain as R18 zoning. Those are 8,000 square foot minimum lot size on both of those lots. Part of that adjustment is to make sure that existing parcel, once this adjustment's done, remains at that minimum lot size. The Planning Commission has reviewed this request. They have recommended that the council approve both the request for the zone change to CTH and for the subdivision amendment as explained previously. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Council, you have any questions? Okay, I know we went over this in our work meeting, and certainly we had some questions answered there, but okay, so we'll go ahead and continue with our public hearing. I know the public hearing, I need a motion now to open this one so that we can take action.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Second? Oh, wait, I don't need to vote on that, sorry. Okay, so your public hearing is now open regarding this rezone request and subdivision plat amendment. So anyone who wished to speak regarding this hearing, you're welcome to come up to either side of the podium, state your name and address if you could for the record, and give us your opinion.
Madam Mayor and Council, appreciate your time this evening. I'm Walker Wood, the applicant for this application. My address is 771 East Hills Drive in Bountiful. I just want to make sure that I acknowledge staff who's been really great to work with on this project. There have been a lot of moving parts with the lot line adjustment and the rezone, and across all the departments we've worked with, they've been very responsive and given us great feedback in a timely manner. So that isn't something we always get when we work in different jurisdictions, and we certainly appreciate what you have here with all of the great staff. And I'm happy to address any questions if you have any for me.
Thank you, Walker. Do you have any questions? He did ask for that. I would, I'll hold my comment till the end. Does anyone else wish to speak on behalf of this public hearing? I'll check with Jane to see if there's any comments online. None online? Okay. Before we take action, I'm just going to make one statement here, and certainly I'm not, I just recognized after our previous presentation regarding the community block grant agreement, and I know that Have a Heart is a great program that we have here, and certainly I'm looking at this, and that could be a potential project there that the city would be interested in. So I think that's something that maybe we could look at down the road and maybe work together on that. So thank you. With that, then, Council, I'll go ahead and take a motion to close the public hearing, and keep in mind that there's two different items here. So so you can close the public hearing for both, but then make a motion on one item, and then we'll have to vote on it, and then we'll have to make a motion on the second item and vote on it.
I make a
I know, I
motion,
totally
we close the public hearing.
Okay.
And approve the rezone. It's under Ordinance 21-05, but both of them are. So I don't know how that. Anyway, I'm talking about the rezone.
Okay.
Right now.
Yeah, the subdivision amendment is not approved by ordinance, so just that the ordinance would apply to that.
It just applies
that
to
zone
it?
change. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. No, you did it
okay.
right, because we're only talking about the rezone here.
Right.
Okay. So, Councilman Fitzpatrick, did you second that?
I will second it.
Okay. So it's moved and seconded. Any discussion?
As we learned in our training, I think it's appropriate to say that this is consistent with the general plan.
Ka-ching! You just got brownie points.
Here, let me turn the recorder off.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the rezone request. So with that, I'll take a roll call vote. I'll start out with Councilmember Day.
Yes.
Councilman Bloxham.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That voting is unanimous. Now I'll entertain a motion to take action regarding the subdivision plat amendment.
I make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that is the motion to approve? Because I did not state that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's been a motion that we approve the subdivision plat amendment. Again, this is a roll call vote. I'll start out with Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilman Bloxham.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Day.
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous that we approve both items for the rezone request. And that, I just got to check one more time, even though we've commented. There's been no other additional comments on anything tonight, right? All right, thank you. Okay, so that brings our public hearings to a close. It actually brings pretty much our meeting to an end, unless there's any unfinished business that we need to address.
Just one comment, which is, I don't know if you guys could hear better today, but I could. This is the first time in a year that I could hear better, and I heard that who's the IT guy? I forgot his name.
Ed?
Ed, yeah. Ed went around and fixed all the mics and stuff. And it was, when he wasn't, earlier today, he was in the middle and I could hear him talking. But tonight I could hear everybody. So kudos for doing something we asked to be done. And he had to figure it out. He didn't know how, but he figured it out. So good on him.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know. So anyway, Alex, if you could pass that on to Ed, just let him know we appreciate that. Okay, the only other thing I can think of is, and I failed to mention this earlier, is, and I know that we keep talking about our centennial, but gosh darn it, we haven't been able to do anything really. However, the Parks and Rec Department did put out a Facebook post regarding the time capsule. And what made me think of it is I thought, wow, what an appropriate item to put in that time capsule is this medallion that DTC, I corrected myself, presented to us, because it has the year 1920 to 2020, but also the backside has got Davis Tech 21. So that's very significant in the fact that this centennial has had to continue. So the purpose of that was to basically encourage anyone who would like to submit items to be placed in that time capsule, that the Parks and Rec Department is accepting those items. And so they'd really like to see you guys contribute to any type of memories, or, I mean, it's kind of unlimited. They'll be subject to a committee review as far as what actually goes in there, but certainly I encourage our residents to participate in that. So I think that's pretty much it, unless anything else. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn. Okay. Second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.